Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another Thursday night here at the Sports Crib. And, folks, it's here. We have football. Preseason, but we have football. Only, what, 5 more weeks until the season begins? Actually, it's a little less than that. I believe it's the 12th of September. But anyway, hey, it's here. You can get a chance to see some of the preseason games, some of the new faces in the NFL, and some of the old faces. Although we know a lot of the older guys will not be playing. But I see Mr. Bill Carroll is here. Good evening, Bill. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Also, I just want to send out my thoughts and prayers to the family of our friend Demetrius Virgis.
Oh, excuse me. What happened? I didn't hear. I haven't heard from him.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to tell more than Demetrius has told you, but just keep him in your thoughts. Somebody very close to Demetrius is in the hospital right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I hadn't heard from him this week, and I was wondering why.
Yeah, well, that's why.
Yeah. So, yes, everybody remember to keep Demetrius in our thoughts and prayers, and we hope that his situation improves as time goes on. Bill, I wanted to talk to you about the NBA. Talk about retiring number 6 league wise. What did you think about that? That's quite an honor.
Well, first of all, it's long overdue. To be perfectly honest, I wondered why there weren't more things named for him throughout the league. I mean, there's some things named for him, but there should be, first of all, much like what we have with Fritz Pollard, there should be some sort of development track program for former players to want to get into front office and coaching. Though obviously the NBA has done far better than the NFL, it's still not perfect. And the William Felton Russell Foundation, the William Felton Russell internship program. There should be a William Felton Russell just about anything you can think of, frankly, James. It is. We talked about him a little bit. Well, maybe more than a little bit, but we didn't talk about him as much as we could talk about him.
Well, we could do a whole show. I mean,
we could do a whole show. Exactly. We could do a whole show. And someone someday should do a whole show on this man's impact on America beyond just basketball. I mean, he was one of the most thoughtful, committed, serious, courageous sports figures. I mean, he's in the same breath to me with people like Jackie Robinson, maybe just a half notch, but not far behind, up there with Arthur Ashe, up there with Ali. I mean, he put up with so much and was so amazing at dealing with it, right? And there were times when he let you know that he was pissed off because he wasn't without a temper. Anyone who knew William Felton Russell well will let you know that he had a bit, he had the ability to let you know when he was not happy, when he was displeased. But the NBA as we know it would not exist without him. He's one of, to me, the top 10 most important people in the history of the league. I mean, Jerry West is on that list. People like, well, I mean, obviously Larry O'Brien. I mean, there's a short list of people that are close to as important. I guess Jordan has fought his way out to the list, but I mean, he's one of the top 10, maybe even top 5 most important people in history. I mean, I guess we can put David, what's his name? Was the commissioner during the sort of real growth explosion.
David Stern.
Stern, thank you. Stern should be on that list. But there's a short list of people who are as important in the history of the NBA as he has been. And he's the only one who together with West, whose importance in terms of a team's destiny, where he shaped that team's destiny not only as a player but as a coach. There's people who've done both, but they didn't have that same sort of impact. When Russell breaks the color line in coaching in the NBA, people don't talk about it as much as they should, James, is how important it was.
I remember it very vividly because there was a lot of talk around that time
Yep.
that even though there were other people qualified, just the racial tension and climate at that particular time, it was felt that Bill Russell was the only one that was tough enough to be able to take that responsibility because, I mean, come on, he was not called Mr. Russell by any stretch of the imagination.
Once again, when you hear the stories his children have to tell of what it was like growing up in Boston at the time they did, and when they bought their first house, I mean, once again, we could do a whole show on the stories, but I mean, crazy things were happening. You know what I mean? Like crazy things. And eventually he went to go get a gun permit, right? And I'm sure you know the story. And then all of a sudden, stuff kind of chilled out. Oh, he's getting a gun? Oh, he's getting So somebody within the police department let it be known, because they must have known who was doing this stuff, because Russell didn't tell these people he was getting a gun permit. The police knew because he put it in the application. And apparently they must have let somebody know who needed to know that, oh, you got a gun. So you may want to, chill out and all that stuff. No more spray painting, no more defecating, no more any of that stuff, because he's about to regulate. So it is difficult for somebody below a certain age to understand how different the NBA was just a generation and a half ago, right? So even in 1970, every team had black players, but some teams had what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, quota, a reverse quota. What term do you want to use? Some of them wouldn't play all of their black players at once just because they didn't like the way it looked. You know what I'm saying? Or they would make sure they didn't have too many on the roster. Or there were teams that just clearly were intentionally avoiding putting an all-black squad out there, right, for a while. So it took the ABA was one of the places where that finally really changed. Lots of ABA teams were like, we're playing our best guys, right? We can't afford to. We don't have enough good white players to try to play that kind of game. Hey, John, you're good, but you're like a seventh guy off the bench. So yeah, you five, get out there. The world that Bill Russell enters when he enters the league is still 64% white, and the starters are a higher percentage white. It's almost 70%, over 70% of the starters when he enters the league are white. It's almost impossible to get someone to believe this. They're below a certain age, James. That 70% of the starters and 64% of the players in the league when he enters the league are white. And almost all of the big stars are white, right? The guys who are at the top of the food chain were pretty much all white guys when he enters the league. There's a sprinkling of black players who are really good. Well, no, who are getting to be really good, who get a chance to show how good they are. That's how I should put it. Who get a chance to really show how good they are. So he presides over the league changing. By the time he leaves the league, the starters in the league are almost 60% black, and the league itself is over two-thirds black when he leaves by the time he's done. So he presides over the NBA going from being essentially a white man's sport to a black man's sport. That all happens on his watch.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do remember when point guard, especially Isaiah Thomas, could have never been a point guard in Boston. I mean, never. Could you?
Well, not in 1961. No, no, not in 1961. No.
I mean, it was quite a while before the Jones brothers got their due.
Yeah, right.
In Boston, and even then, who did you?
So
did you have Havlicek that was bringing the ball down then? I believe.
The guys that really changed the whole point guard thing were Al Attles and Lenny Wilkins, right? Yeah. So when Al Attles and Lenny Wilkins came in immediately and became starters, like they realized, oh, we can't not start these guys. We don't have anybody anywhere close to as good as them. What do we got? We have to start them. They were the ones that made it so that, okay, we can't mess around with this anymore. Or at least for some teams, we can't mess around with this anymore. So yes, it was definitely seen as once again, that was the the period. These are the position they reserved, the last position they sort of reserved. And then Adels, of course, was a guy that made that player coach transition. Following Russell. So he did that. I think he was the second one, right? I think he was the second black coach, if memory serves correctly. So with the Warriors in like, I don't know, 69, 70, sometime late in his career, he became an assistant and was briefly their head coach. But so yeah, Guy Rogers. So the guys that come in like that, Al Adels and Lenny Wilkins were the ones that said, it doesn't make sense to try to play somebody else. And so the Destroyer, right? You don't see nicknames like that anymore in the NBA. When's the last time you saw somebody with a nickname like the Destroyer? But when Al the Destroyer Adels comes in, God, I love that nickname. And it becomes clear to any and everyone he was a true point guard, right? He could score, and he was a fine scorer, but he was a true point guard. He's a pass first, run it, run everything out there, make the trains run on time point guard. And so he takes over that position, I think, in 60. I think
then a point guard was really a point guard, not the different positions that we have today where they're kind of hybrid. But
right. But, he was pure point guard. He was a pure point guard. And so, when he hits the league, I think a year before Wilkins, and both those guys, made it clear that they were as good as anybody and better than the vast majority at that position. And actually, they may have entered the league the same year, but I think Adels was older. But either way, 1960 was a watershed year because you saw, black point guards coming in and thriving.
I was reading where it said that the NBA has received an A+ for its racial hiring practices and a B+ for its gender hiring practices, and an overall A according to the 2022 NBA Racial and Gender Report Card released yesterday. Why does the NBA seem to have a better handle on these practices than the NFL, despite the Rooney Rule in the NFL?
Okay, well, that's not too difficult to answer. Part of it is just the fact that the NBA, like we just said, about 50 years ago, began. I mean, they had about a 13-year head start, I believe, on black coaches, if my math is right. Shell gets the job in, was it 83, 80? It was, let me see, what year was it that he replaced Flores, right? So
for the Raiders,
So it was later than 83. It was more like a 20-year head start. Because I think Flores stepped down maybe it was probably in the 90s now I think about it. So when Art Shell breaks the color line for coaching, first of all, it was a much lower process. And of course, we'd heard about Tony Dungy forever, right? Tony Dungy's gonna be a great head coach someday, right? I first remember hearing this in the late 70s, James. He's gonna be a great head coach someday, I mean,
they said that. They said that while he was still playing.
Right. Everybody knew he was gonna be a great coach someday.
Someday, like you said.
Right, someday. Not now, but someday. someday.
And after his playing career is over, we know that he'll be a coach someday.
Someday. So that's the thing that is the difference, is that they had I guess probably I said 12 or 13 years, probably close to a 20-year head start. So the shock, or whatever term you want to use, wasn't as great when you saw black people starting to move into these leadership roles that didn't involve dribbling or shooting, right? So when the NFL said, okay, we're beginning to warm up to the idea, they warmed up very slowly to the idea, James. And I still will never stop being pissed off about Sherm Lewis never getting a chance to be a head coach. I mean, look at Sherm Lewis's tree of young coaches he essentially breastfed when he was an offensive coordinator for Green Bay and San Francisco. Talk about a who's who. I mean, he helped the careers of Andy Reid and John Gruden and Steve Mariucci, and he and Holmgren, I guess, were about the same level. So I guess he didn't really nurture. Well, it was maybe a little bit early in Holmgren's tenure, but I mean, it's like I said, it's a who's who. I mean, seemingly every offensive Shanahan, almost got Shanahan, almost every serious offensive mind of a 10-year period at some point worked for Sherm Lewis, and they all got head coaching jobs, James. Every one of them, every swinging, you know what, that worked under Sherm Lewis got a head coaching job, and somehow Sherm Lewis didn't. So yes, the NBA did it's one of those things where the NBA did a pretty decent job, not an amazing, but a decent job. But it's because the NFL did such a god awful job that they look so good by comparison. It's one of those things where if you fall down the steps 4 times before we run this race, I'm going to look like Carl Lewis when we run this race, right? Because you fell down the steps 4 times first. That's what's happening here. The NBA looks like it's, oh my God, look at them go. Look how gracefully they're moving. Because the NFL fell down the steps 4 times, James. And so that's why the NBA looks so great by comparison, because the NFL kept stepping on its own, you know what? Like, they were terrible. I mean, without thinking hard, I can name of 7, 8 amazing black assistant coaches who just got screwed in this deal, including Rodney Pete's dad. Remember him? Skip Pete. Another guy that people could talk about, oh, wow, what a great assistant coach he is. Yeah, he's an amazing assistant coach. Yeah, what a great assistant coach he is. Speaking of fathers, David Shaw's father was a great assistant coach. Willie Shaw for, 30-something years in the NFL. Wow, what a great assistant coach that Willie Shaw is. Wow, what an amazing assistant coach he is. So that's why the NBA looks so great by comparison, because they didn't fall down the steps 4 times.
It's an amazing analogy, Bill. But, quite true. Quite true. Once again, I'm kind of confused here because of the amount of money involved. But anyway, KD has a meeting with the governor of the Nets, Joe Tsai. And, what do you make of KD's demand that they trade him or fire Steve Nash and Sean Marks? To me, this is the equivalent to, a captain going into the room, coming into the office and telling the colonel, well, I just don't like the way that the general is running.
This battalion isn't working quite the way I imagined.
Get me out of here, or remove the general and his aides. I mean,
you gotta go.
And not only that, but I want to keep my pay and my rank.
Or perhaps even be promoted. Yes. So here's what's going on here. And I enjoy his good mutiny as much as the next guy, James. But here's what's going on. Remember when they said, and we all kind of laughed at it, well, we're all coaches here, right? Remember that? Remember those days? Sometimes I'll be the coach. Sometimes he'll be the coach. Remember those days? See, we think we're laughing it off, James, but it's not funny to everybody, right? Somebody wasn't laughing when they made that remark about we're all the coach, right? Right? So certain players, frankly, you didn't hear it from me, but there are players in the NBA, some of them don't really believe they need a coach at all. I'm just telling you, James, just so in case you hadn't heard, there are some players in the NBA who don't believe they actually need a coach anyway. Just so you know. So, and Steve Nash, I mean, let's be honest. It's not like he worked his way up through the ranks exactly. I mean, Steve Nash sort of got, born on third base and thought he hit a triple. I mean, so that's another thing that went on here. And I'm not anti-Steve Nash. I think one day he'll be a good coach. One day, right? One day his rear gets ugly head again. But he got there a little too fast with this kind of team. Let's look at the kinds of teams there are in the NBA. This isn't the Memphis Grizzlies. This isn't, you know what I mean? Like this isn't the Pelicans. This isn't the team with a bunch of eager, young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed youngsters where Steve Nash was a guy they used to play as on NBA Live or whatever. This is a team full of grizzled, disgruntled veterans, James, and they decided Steve Nash was the right man for this assignment. And I like Steve Nash, and I think one day he'll be. But this is not the right. No, this is not the right group for Steve Nash to cut his teeth on. Hey, Steve, we've got a bunch of strong, arrogant, sometimes even dismissive personalities. And for your first assignment as a coach, why don't you take this bunch of billionaires and whip them into shape for us, right? So I'm not saying it's impossible to do that, but it's a very high degree of difficulty, James.
Well, see, here's the thing. See, when you think of my thoughts on this and Steve Nash, Steve Nash got that job because people recognized or sought someone that had a soft personality. And this was always a team where the inmates ran the asylum.
So this particular, I don't want to use that particular analogy about inmates, but I will say this. You have this terrific, right? One of the, short lists, right? Maybe on the Mount Rushmore of point guards. Certainly, if not, they're damn close. I mean, there's not too many better point guards in the history of the game. He's on a very short list of the great point guards. And he retired, a mere 7 years ago. Then he becomes a part-time consultant with the Warriors. He times it perfectly, right? Because he shows up as a part-time consultant. He goes 73-9, right? So, he couldn't have timed it better. Could not time it better. He's with them for a couple of years. Then he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame after they decided to decrease the old 5-year limit to 3 for whatever reason. I guess they just couldn't wait. I don't know. So, and then, he's on the all 75 university team. And then obviously, less than a year ago, September 3rd of less than 2 years ago. Less than 2 years ago, September 3rd of 2020, he's announced that he's going to be, a head coach. And, some good moments in there. It's not like he's had some 48-24 at one point, his first time there in the chair. So it's not like he's stinking it up exactly, but that's a tough bunch of guys to coach, man. I mean, like, look at that room you walk into and who's in it and what they're thinking when you walk into that room. That's a difficult roster. I'll just leave it at that. I think we all. I mean, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, Seth. I mean, it's okay. Seth Curry.
Well, even when you think of before that, when it was supposed to be, when Harden was supposed to be there. Before
not the easiest person to coach.
But now, be it the Celtics or the 76ers, should the Nets trade, or do you think that they're going to trade him to a contender within their own division, somebody that they have to face, multiple times over the season?
I think if they end up moving him, they move him wherever they can move him. I mean,
you could come on now. You're going to tell me that they couldn't move him to the Pelicans?
Well, I mean, they could move him to the Pelicans, I guess, but woof. I mean, are they going to hypnotize KD first? I mean, that's the only problem I'd have with that one. Like, how do they talk him into that?
You want to go, right? you're talking about you want to go, right? Hey, this is what makes sense for us. This is what makes sense for the organization. I mean, come on. I mean, would you honestly trade him to a team that you have to face, like I said, multiple times over the season,
But it's
you
only
know,
if so many teams that can
and
make it
have to
work,
watch
though.
that finger shake, or uh, you know the everything that's going to come with it every
Sure,
time
but
he comes to Brooklyn.
okay, but let me just once again, 42 million, 18,900 per year. There, not every team can fit that. Like that's not every place. So I agree. They have to find first a place that can absorb that contract, and that's not everybody. Not everybody. Not
No,
everybody can do that. So that's the first challenge, and then you have to get him to. I mean, I guess you can trade him to a place he doesn't want to play. I guess. Uh,
you
that
own him. I mean, basically, you have his contract for 4 years now.
yep.
I mean,
Yeah, you
now
do.
it's kind of obvious that he's not going to get to Phoenix, where he said that he wanted to go, and
Not unless I mean, it wouldn't be the same team anymore.
right, right, and I mean, do you seriously think that Pat is going to break up the future of Miami to get a 34-year-old Durant, even if it only means one title?
Okay, so as you said, the Pelicans make sense-ish. The Celtics are a place where he's made it clear he would like to go. I don't know how the Celtics feel about it, and how they would make it work. Once again, financially, because money is everything in these deals. As our friend, and once again, shout out to Dimitri Rich said, you're not trading players, you're trading contracts. You're trading contracts. So you have to figure out how that's going to work financially. And so somebody has to free up, or either already have that kind of space, which most teams don't, or they have to be willing to free it up, which is not impossible, but stupid difficult. Okay, let's talk about teams where it could legitimately, possibly, maybe happen. Portland could make the space part work. They only have one big contract, and that's Dame. The problem is, what assets could they give Brooklyn back? Uh, and that as the joke goes, the other than getting to play with Dame and Gary Payton Jr. Well, I guess Gary Payton Jr. might be part of the deal now I think about it. So other than playing with Dame, I guess that might be the only thing. And not having to pump your own gas, because one of those real little quirks in Portland, it is, I guess, illegal to pump your own gas. Uh, Fun fact. Let's see. Okay. Could Atlanta make it work? Maybe. So assuming that they're willing to give up Jonte Murray, John Collins, Anika Okongwu, and every draft pick they have for quite some time, they could potentially build a big three, or maybe let me see, or maybe if they, I guess they could have a big three if they somehow dealt a bunch of picks, Collins, Okongwu, and somebody else, and managed to hold on to Murray. Then they could have a big three with Murray, Trae Young, and Durant. Um, The Wizards can't do it because they're going to have to give Bradley Beal all the money. Uh,
So
the
I'm
Knicks,
saying, I mean, like you said, I understand that the teams that can do it,
uh-huh.
you know, are all in the East. That I mean, like I said, with the exceptions of maybe the Pelicans, or if you're going to give up, if you're going to make that trade Westbrook for KD, then maybe the Lakers. But other than that,
Right. I mean, there's a few teams, yeah, but not
yeah,
many.
yeah,
I mean,
and I mean, how ironic would it be, that the team that you traded to, you trade him who knocks you out in the playoffs.
Yep.
I mean, yeah,
Yep.
you know, there's a lot of slippery slopes in this little thing
Yeah.
here.
Now, if you like sort of messy history, fun things, I mean, the Houston Rockets seem to have a thing for taking uh, former Oklahoma superstars because they can complete the set if they get Durant because they've already had Harden and Westbrook.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's that. They could make it work monetarily, but I can't figure out what they give the Nets if the Nets would want other than once again draft picks.
No.
We talked about the Pelicans a little bit. They could potentially have a really, really big one and a plus KD if it's a big if somehow Zion can get healthy. Now here's one that I think could work if they got really creative is the Bulls. So what they'd have to do, okay, so they have a scrappy, lovable team with good players on it. So I guess Lonzo Ball, Patrick Williams. Uh,
I don't think they had the draft capital for
yeah,
for what the Nets would be looking for,
see Vukcic.
but
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, it's not impossible, but it could possible. And then once again, the Toronto Raptors, who have a past history of trading for disgruntled superstars, as
yeah.
well. They have the money, right? Um,
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, that could also, except for the fact that, I mean, the only one that probably couldn't go in a trade to Toronto is Kyrie, because you have to be vaccinated in order to go to Canada. But other than that, Jeffrey, how are you doing this evening? Glad to see you here. You're muted, Jeffrey.
I'm doing good. How are you all
There you
tonight?
yes.
go. There you
Yay.
go.
There's our guy. Plus, Jeffrey, I want to bring you on. I have a show that specifically does talks draft prospects, and I want to talk about ACC draft prospects. So we should talk soon.
Okay, yeah, that'll work. I'll
I
definitely go.
can I can give you his email if you wanted, or Jeff, however you guys want to do
Uh,
it. Just let me know.
as long as it's Jeffrey's okay with it, then I'll take. I don't care where I get the information from. Somebody give me his information.
uh, Jeffrey, so how have you been in the midst of all this chaos?
Just following it from afar, wondering how to look in 5 years.
Yeah.
Say hello to Marshall Fundringherd, the newest member of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Yeah.
Oh man, so Jeffrey, I'm going to start you off with a little controversy here because
Okay.
I was looking at the top 25, and then I read another article about the teams that were most overrated in the top 25. And lo and behold, I see Pitt at number 16 and Cincinnati at number 22. What do you think about that, Jeffrey? Are those teams overrated? And what is the overall look for uh, football in the ACC?
Well, I mean, if you go by the first coaches poll, preseason coaches poll, the ACC has 5 teams ranked in the top 19, and that's the most of any conference in college football. So, um, you know, for the ACC, they're always looking, for respect. Well, they got some here in the preseason, and it's going to be a matter, can they hold on to it? There is no, okay, we had Clemson ranked numbers, in the top 10 and nobody else ranked or one team around 20. I mean, they're starting out in a great position. And now it's a matter of, hey, you've been given respect in the first poll. Can you hold on to it and keep it? So I mean, I think for the next month of the season, ACC schools can say like, hey, the national media is saying we should be pretty good this year. Now we just have to play like it. Um, as far as Pittsburgh, I think that's an appropriate ranking for them. I mean, Jordan Addison, they're at USC. Kenny Pickett's gone, but I mean, that's a team that's got a pretty good amount of talent returning. Um, when you look at most all ACC teams, through the first 2, 3 teams. I mean, they have usually 8, 9, 10 players on that all ACC team. I mean, they're really good at safety. They've got some NFL caliber defensive linemen. The transfer Slovis from USC, who's likely to be the starter. I mean, I've seen him. I mean, I'm always hesitant to put a transfer out there and say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country or in the ACC, and especially with it so talented. But I've seen lists that have, Keaton Slovis, in the top 5 or 6 of ACC quarterbacks, and if he plays to that level, Pittsburgh could be. I don't know. I mean, of course, it's going to be a drop off from Kenny Pickett, but I mean, they could really be pretty solid. They opened the season with game day, West Virginia, and Tennessee, and you win both of those games, you're going to be in the top 10 where they're starting. And they beat Tennessee last year. I think it's an appropriate ranking for them because of the amount of talent they have returning.
And what about Cincinnati?
I mean, I think Cincinnati is now a pretty established program. Um, they were solid last year. Probably played a little bit above their talent level, but I mean, I don't know quite as much about them as the ACC schools. But from what I've seen, I mean, I think having them in the 20s is also an appropriate ranking. I don't think either one is overrated at this time.
What did you think about Narduzzi's comments? And the way they kind of rackled a lot of some of the established coaches.
Which ones were those? Because he said quite a few things recently that that have rankled a lot of people.
I was particularly talking about the portal and the way the rich get richer.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you could have been referring to uh, the Big Six bowl game against Michigan State, where he said if Pickett would have played, they would have
Oh
definitely won
yeah,
that
yeah.
game.
Well, well, the guys whose feathers I would have wanted to rankle with that are not here. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
so,
But
but,
y- yeah, I saw some of those comments by Narduzzi, and I think a lot of it stems from what happened with Jordan Addison. Um,
Yep.
I think that it all starts and ends with there, and I mean they've been the beneficiary of transfers too. I mean they got Slovis from USC, and
Lucas Krull from Florida.
yeah, that's right. I mean, so they've had players come in there, but I mean I think I can understand it, and I think there's a lot of frustration across the board. I mean, from the SEC coaches anywhere in the country, it's just out of control right now with absolutely no regulation, and just some coaches are going to voice their opinions more than others. But I don't think there's any coach who out there who's going to say like, "Hey, the system is great right now." I mean, we saw what happened with with Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. I mean, them getting into it earlier this year, so between NIL and the transfer portal, I mean, I don't think there's anyone who's happy with the way it is.
uh,
Except
uh,
some of the players.
Yeah, except
yeah.
except some of the players. That's true. That's right, Bill.
So, who should we be looking for? I know way too early to really tell, but who's some of the teams that we should be looking at in the ACC? Of course, seems like Clemson is back, right? And also, Notre Dame. We talked about this before. Notre Dame's independence, and it seems like the AD, Mr. Warback, says that. Warburg, excuse me, says that this continuous upheaval of the conferences is actually a validation of Notre Dame staying independent. What do you think about that? When I mean, their commitment to the ACC is it football and basketball?
It's in all sports, and then they
Okay.
got the partial agreement with the football, the 5 games a year with ACC schools.
So
Um,
we've gone from being like Notre Dame's late night booty call to at least higher up in the rotation. Is that what that means?
yeah, the drunken call at night. But yeah, I'll start with Notre Dame first. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'll start with Notre Dame first. I think the recent events have made it almost clear that, and you know what, I've grown to respect this year with their commitment to independence, because basically all that's holding college athletics together from uh, just the two-team mega conferences right now is basically Notre Dame and the ACC's grant of rights. And um, for a long time I was like, what's Notre Dame doing? What's their obsession with being independent? But I've come to kind of respect it because it's like one of the last great traditions in college athletics, uh, for them to stay independent. And I think these recent events have shown. I mean, they're gonna stay independent. I mean, this noise that you hear about them joining the Big Ten, I don't see that happening anytime soon. There's one way that Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, and that's if they're locked out of the playoffs and have no playoff access, which is going to be extremely unlikely. When you talk about the money portion of it, the Big Ten just got $350 million from CBS for 13 games, and you're going to tell me that for 7 home games for Notre Dame, they can't get 75 million, for half of the content and be their home games. uh, they're going to get that increase because they want that lead in. They want to pair those two together. And now that those Big Ten games can promote Notre Dame football as well on NBC, before Penn State and Ohio State is Notre Dame playing so and so. Um, they're gonna get what they're looking for, which it's kind of rumored to be 75 million. Then you add in the money they get from the ACC, which is going to increase because they got the Comcast deal done last year. So they're going to probably get in the neighborhood of 15 million, 10 to 15 million from the ACC. And then when you have the playoffs and that big financial bonanza is negotiated, well, when Notre Dame makes the playoff, they're keeping their whole piece,
Yep.
and that's going to be enough. I don't. It's hard to predict, 10 years down the road, but for the next foreseeable future, Notre Dame's going to stay independent, and in a lot of ways, that's going to be good for the sport. Um, Now, with the teams from the ACC, the one to look for, and they're pretty highly ranked in the preseason. I think NC State is going to be 13, but if I remember right in the coaches poll, but that team has got all the components to be a real dark horse in the ACC, and even a dark horse to make the playoffs. I mean, they have an experienced quarterback. They've got some quality wide receivers. They've got talent on defense. They might have, one of the top 3 linebacking cores in all of college football, with Peyton Wilson and Drake Thomas and um, I just remember his first name, Isaiah. Can't remember his last name, but I mean that group of uh, linebackers is one of the best in college football. So I mean,
Come on,
I
Bill. Isaiah who?
I know which one you're talking about, though. He plays whip on the weak side. Hold on.
yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to look it up real quick. I can't
I'm
help
surprised
myself.
it's not written in the palm of Bill's hand, but okay,
Hold
Joe.
on. Hold on. I can picture it. Give me a second.
Isaiah Moore. Isaiah
Yeah,
Moore.
there it is.
I
Yeah.
had to I had to look it up. Drake Thomas, Peyton Wilson. I mean, that's a really talented
Yeah.
core of linebackers, and I think one of the big differences between them, they've been drawing comparisons to North Carolina's high ranking last year. The big difference is that North Carolina was really good on one side of the ball, and their defense was still a question mark. But North Carolina State has got a lot of balance on both sides of the ball, and they got to go to Clemson
Yep.
and play that game in Death Valley. And as good as I think Clemson will be on defense, and they're going to be elite on defense. They're going to be every bit as good as they were in 2018, or as good as Georgia was on defense last year. You just don't know about the quarterback position with Uiagalelei. I mean, you hear all the right things in practice right now, but until you see it on the game, until you see him in a game, you don't know how he's going to perform. We've seen him perform extremely well, but last year was as a struggle. And I mean, if he plays like he did, especially the first half of last year, and I don't think he played even what he improved in the second half, but I still don't think that was good enough. Um, Last year, if he plays like that in the second half to get Clemson to the playoffs, that's a big question mark. And that NC State team, you know, they beat Clemson last year. They handled them at the line of scrimmage, even though Clemson was a little bit got some injuries in that game. That was no fluke. So I really, you really got to look at NC State and another team in the ACC that's pretty highly ranked is I want to see Miami. I mean, they have a quarterback in the Van Dyke kid who might be the best QB prospect in the ACC. They got to go to Texas A&M, but Miami has a chance to be, pretty darn good too. Wake Forest
Oh
with
yeah.
their offense, they have the injury, the non-football injury to Sam Hartman, and there's very little details other than he will come back this year. But does that mean that he'll be back middle of the season after the first 4 weeks? And so, that was a team that offensively could cause a lot of problems, but we just don't know what Sam Hartman's status is going to be.
Bill, do you agree with Jeffrey that Notre Dame is going to stay an independent? Good evening, Don. How you doing today, my man?
Doing good. How y'all doing? Sorry I'm late.
Uh,
Had some company.
Yep.
Going,
Well, I think
going.
as long as they're able to get essentially their needs met, as Jerry said, one, access to playing in the CFP, and two, being able to fill out their schedule with quality opponents. That's really all they need. If they can get those two things done without joining a conference, they won't. If for some reason they get, as you said, either locked out of the playoff or locked out of enough quality opponents which I don't think will ever happen, because who doesn't want to play Notre Dame? So I think that they will be, able to soldier on alone at least for a while longer. I wanted to ask Jeffrey at some point about what he thinks about Habakkuk Baldonado and his chances to maybe push his way into the, top maybe 2 round consideration. I like that kid a lot, and he's still super raw. But the ACC is going to be much more compelling and interesting than some people might think. I think this year.
Yeah, I think the ACC this is probably the deepest they've been at quarterback since 2016 when they had with you know Lamar Jackson
Sean
and
Watson.
Brad. I think Brad Kyle was there at Miami, and Justin
Yep.
Thomas at Georgia Tech, Deshaun Watson at Clemson. And I'm sure I left out a couple other guys, but you go to this year. This is as deep a quarterback group as they've had since them. I mean, even neutral media around the country said the ACC could be the best conference in America at quarterback this year. I mean, you got guys like Malik Cunningham there at Louisville who
Yep.
don't even make most top five lists, and
Yep.
Slovis is not hadn't been on a lot of those top five lists either. Um, Phil Jurkovec at Boston College is a quality quarterback, and
Yes.
we went to Van Dyke and Hartman and Devin Leary. I mean, this is a really good quarterback group in the ACC, and I agree with Bill. That's going to make for a lot of compelling matchups and probably the most that we've seen in several years in the ACC. This has a chance to be one of the better years of ACC football in the last 7 or 8 years.
Yep. Agreed.
Uh, Don, I was talking with Jeffrey earlier about the top 25, and we were talking about some of the teams that they said were overrated. And I pointed out to Jeffrey the two Pitt and Cincinnati, but they also said that uh, Texas was overrated at number 18, I believe, or was it number 16? But anyway, Don, what do you make of this when every day I pick up, or I look on TV and Texas is getting another recruit. They also said that they thought that Texas A&M was overrated at number 7. What's your thought on this USA AFAC poll, Don?
Well, I don't think Texas is overrated. I think Texas is right where they need to be. Number, in the second half of the top 20. To me, Texas on paper has as much talent as anyone in the nation on offense. Not defense is a different story, but I think they're probably right where they should be for right now. A&M, they have a quarterback issue. They don't have a proven quarterback. They're loaded on defense, but their offense is kind of suspect. Jimbo Fisher is kind of conservative with his offense, and so I think A&M is probably overrated. They upset Alabama last year, but got run out of the house by Mississippi State. So there you go. So that's my thoughts on that. I think Pittsburgh is probably overrated. They lost a chunk of their offense. Cincinnati is they're just well coached. They're always going to be in the thick of it. They're going to pull upsets. So I think they're right on target. But I was going to ask Jeffrey. We were talking about the ACC. One of my favorite players from last year was a guy named Cade Klubnik from Austin Westlake. And I was really hoping Texas would go for him. Texas decided to go after Malik Murphy from California and ended up with Quinn Ewers. But Quinn Ewers and Cade Klubnik, they actually faced each other their junior years in state championship, which was won by Cade Austin Westlake team. So I was just going to ask if he had heard how he's doing in the Clemson camp.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard positive things about him, and his talent level is clearly evident. I mean, he's come out and said that it's still DJ's team right now. But I mean, I have to say, when I saw Klubnik in the spring game, I was really impressed. I mean, he's got a live arm. He can see the field, and honestly, I thought he outperformed Uiagalelei in the spring game, and I was like, if that continues, he'll be the starter by game 4. I mean, he's really, really talented. I mean, you could see, the first time you saw Deshaun Watson throw it, like in that Georgia game, he throws a laser beam right out of the as soon as he comes out of the game, he throws his laser for a touchdown. You're like, wow, that kid has it. I know Trevor Lawrence was playing at Texas A&M and struggled a little bit in that game, and the Bryan kid started most of that. It started that game before he lost that job. But I mean, you could tell Trevor could really throw it, and that's what I saw with Klubnik in the spring game. I think Uiagalelei is going to have to really play at a level that we didn't see last year to hold on to that job, because Klubnik can play. He's a talent, that's for sure.
So just so everyone knows, Klubnik comes from the same school, Austin Westlake, that produced Drew Brees, Nick Foles, Sam Ellinger as quarterbacks. Justin Tucker came from there. He's for the Ravens. So they've put in a lot of guys in the NFL. Seth McKinney, who played in the NFL for many years at A&M.
Yep. Texans.
Yeah, they're all from Westlake. They probably have as much alumni in the NFL as anyone that. I'm not about just on alumni, but I'm talking about actual guys who contribute.
Don, do you think that Notre Dame is going to stay independent?
That's a good. They're a natural fit in the Big Ten. I don't know how much money they're getting from their NBC contract. As far as I know, they're still with NBC, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I think if they went to the Big Ten, they'd have to give it up. I don't know where they are financially on that. I'm sure Notre Dame isn't hurting for money. They have a pretty strong following and fan base and alumni. Of course, the Catholic Church. I've been to the Vatican. There's money.
You think? You think maybe? But Don, the Big Ten nears deals with Fox, NBC. It's just signed the deal with ABC, uh, but they haven't dealt with ESPN. Don, has ESPN lost its clout?
ESPN is firmly entrenched in the SEC, and that's where they want to be. Now they'll do some ACC, I think, but ESPN is not worried about the Big Ten or the Pac-10, Pac-12. They're like an East Coast network. They're like South all the way up to Virginia, North Carolina, ACC, SEC. I think that's where the money is. I think in football. And I'm not taking away from the Big Ten or Pac-10 or whatever, but or Big 12 even. I keep forgetting we're still in the Big 12. But yeah, so I don't think ESPN is going to panic over that.
What's your thoughts on that, Jeffrey?
I think it was a surprise that ESPN didn't get a piece of the Big Ten, but I mean, if it's one thing the Big Ten knows how to do, and that's negotiate media rights deals. They don't have the most success on the field, but I mean, when it comes to cash and checks, they're really good at it, and they're gonna have games on Fox. They have the CBS deal, and then NBC, and ESPN just wasn't willing to try to match those deals to keep some of the Big Ten rights. And like Don said, ESPN is going. I mean, they're going to go all in with the SEC. I mean, if you thought it was bad before, with the hyping of a SEC team, it's going to be through the roof now because that's going to be their core audience. There'll be some ACC on there, that's for sure. I think you'll see them end up with at least one of the two of the Pac-12 or Big 12. That's going to remain to be seen what they land, but that's going to be weird because I don't know if you'll see a game day at a Big Ten school this year, or how they cover it. Well, of course they have to talk about it because of the highlights and everything. They have to talk about the Big Ten, but how much is it going to be diminished? Where's Big Ten basketball going to be? They hadn't even, because you always saw those games on ESPN, and with Fox, you don't see much college basketball on there. So you have to wonder, they're going to cash huge checks, but at the risk of exposure to like basketball. Great exposure for football, but I wonder if they sacrifice some things with their basketball programs with the deal they signed.
What's your thoughts on that, Bill?
Well, one, I mean, obviously Fox Sports, they do have some college basketball. Maybe they're trying to expand. Maybe this will give them that opportunity to do more of that. But at the risk of saying the obvious thing, the straw that stirs the drink in college sports is college football. And so when schools make their decisions about what they're doing with television, they make it based on the college, football deal. When the network makes a decision about, I mean, not that they don't care about college basketball, but they care more about college football because they know how many eyeballs and how many Ram, truck commercials they can run and how many Bud Light commercials they can run, because you're going to get 18 to 34-year-old males stuck on their couch from 11 Eastern until 9, 10 at night. And you just can't, nowadays, with as fragmented as broadcast television is, there's no other place you can buy that block of time with dudes basically being immobilized watching television. That's dead. I mean, except for that, there's no other place you can get that. Even NFL Sundays don't keep you welded in one spot quite as long as a whole day of college football does, especially if you do the Pac-12 after dark thing. You can put in 14 hours. I've done it before. So, so it's a little different than anything else. There's nothing else that gets you that key demographic stuck in one spot for that long. So that's always going to be the thing that makes the final decision. I think that they'll figure something out for college basketball. Either at some point they'll write these contracts in such a way that they have some sort of way of some of their college basketball games still being with someone else, or like I said earlier, whoever it is that's paying, will say, yeah, we're going to also start carrying more college basketball since we have more college basketball to show.
Bill, as we've said quite a few times, the coaches poll came out this week and released their top 25. I noticed that the Big Ten has 3 teams in the top 10. Bill, who's your top 10? 1 through 10.
Yeah,
You can start with number 10 and counting down.
I just did a top 25 recently, and it's sitting as a draft, so I can actually pull it up, and I can tell you that. So I'm glad you asked.
Yeah. As I said, start with 10 and work your way down.
I will do that. But to me, in terms of the way college football works nowadays, and more than ever, you see fans getting each other's faces about recruiting in a way that when I started college football, not just covering but following college football, I mean, people will be aware if they got some stud, but you wouldn't taunt people about your recruiting class. Like, that's a relatively recent development. Like, oh, we got so-and-so. You suckers only got X number of 4 stars and X number. Like, that's something people talk trash about. So that's new to me. Or new period, I guess. That's a big part of the what do you call it? The talking of the trash. Let's see. One moment. At 10, I have Wisconsin. At 9, I have USC. At 8, I have Texas A&M. 7, I have Notre Dame. 6, I have the aforementioned Clemson from the ACC. 5, I have Oklahoma. 4, I have Michigan. 3, well, it gets easy now, right? 3, I have Georgia. 2, I have Ohio State. Number 1, I have Alabama.
Okay, a few little variations there. Don, who's your top 10?
Oh, wow. Okay, so going from 10 to 1, I would probably put USC at number 10. I would put probably A&M at number 9. Oklahoma at 8. Michigan at 7. Probably Notre Dame at 6. Clemson. No, wait. I'm gonna go real brave here, just because I'm gonna put LSU in there. We'll hear a lot about LSU, but I'll go LSU at 6. I'll go Clemson at 5. I'm at 5 or 6.
You're getting ready to number 4. You're at number 4.
Oh, at number 4. I don't know. Tell you what, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna put Clemson at number 4. I'm gonna throw NC State at number 10 to move everybody up. How's that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I'll go. I'll go. Then from there I'll go. Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. Georgia number 1.
Okay, all right.
And the only reason I put Georgia's number 1 is they're champs until proven otherwise.
We got one vote Alabama, one vote Georgia. Jeffrey, who's your top 10 going from 10 to 1?
Yeah, I like the Don's NC State at number 10, and I'm gonna put them there too. I think they are going to be a really solid team. I like Oregon at number 9, Oklahoma at 8, Utah at 7.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I like the Pac-12 teams out there. Not as high as some on Michigan. In these rings, I probably have them about 11. So I think I'm at number 7. So the Texas A&M, I'm good. I'm good with that. I think I lost kind of count where I was.
You're number 6. You got Texas A&M at 7.
Okay. Did I already have Oklahoma?
Nope.
Not yet.
Yep. Yeah. I knew I'm pretty high on Oklahoma, so I have them at 6, and then I'm okay. Well, actually, I'd rather have Notre Dame at 6. I think 5 is a bit too high. Have Oklahoma at 5, and then the top 4. I agree with the coaches poll. Clemson at 4, Georgia at 3, Ohio State at 2, and Alabama at number 1. I think Alabama. They're just loaded, absolutely loaded all over the field.
I tried finding a weakness, Jeffrey, and I really because I normally think, oh, people are slightly overrating Alabama, but I do. Man, God.
I mean, they're so unbelievably loaded on offense. From the quarterback and Young. I mean, they got the best offensive player Georgia Tech has had since Calvin Johnson is now playing at Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs, and I mean, I don't think half the country sees how good that guy is going to be. And he was capable of just taking it to his house, out to the house at any moment when he played at Georgia Tech behind a horrendous offensive line and coaching staff, and now he's at Alabama. I mean, I think Alabama is probably going to win every game in a regular season by double digits. It's just going to take some kind of effort to take a full 4-quarter game with them.
And once again, they're the recipient of some really nice transfers. I mean,
they took I can't quite remember his name, but they took for the ACC being down, Alabama takes Gibbs off of Georgia Tech, and then the fastest player arguably in the ACC, the wide receiver from Louisville's down there too now.
Yep. He's gonna have a monster year in their offense.
Yes.
People are like, who? No. That kid's ludicrously good. God, I'm sick of how good they are. But yes, they're really, really good. I wanted to find a flaw that's like, but look, nope. I really did.
Jeffrey, as always, good talking with you. Glad to see you, as always, and always full of information for us. Why don't you give us your final thoughts and tell everybody where you can find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Talking ACC Sports. The blog is allsportsdiscussion.com, and man, I'm ready now for college football. I'd kind of been pacing myself, and now it's actually it's like 16 days away here because week 0 is the last week in August, and I mean, I know Florida State and North Carolina, there. Florida State's playing like Duquesne. I don't care. I'm ready to watch it. It's getting actually it's not it's feels a little bit like fall over here in South Carolina. It's like in the 80s, and it's got me ready to go. I'm just, all this meteorite stuff and expansion. It's interesting, but now I'm ready for football. Let's just get on to the season.
I hear you, Jeffrey. And hey, it'll be interesting following those quarterbacks in the ACC, as well as what's going on, and and emerging. Uh, Interesting following the quarterback from Wake Forest, as
Yep.
well as some other stories. So, thank you so much, Jeffrey, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always, guys. Enjoyed it.
Habakkuk Baldonado. I think he pushes his way into the top 50 before it's all said and done.
All right. We'll keep an eye on him. See you.
Always good talking with Jeffrey. Don, how have things been? We're having a little heat wave out here in California, and it might not rain, but it's certainly getting hot. How are things out there in Texas? I know there's
you mentioned the weather, and of course we've had temperatures 104, 105, pretty normal.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
today it rained, and I guess I remember growing up, the elderly people in my family would always get excited about rain, and I never got it. But now that I'm old, hey, we got rain.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel there, Don. It's like, oh my goodness, but yeah, it is interesting. You get rain. I see Mike is here, so I know it's NFL time. What's going on, Mike?
Hello, sir. How's everybody doing tonight?
There he is.
Yeah, I don't know. Looks like we might have ran Chris away here. I got to find out what's going on with Chris. But Mike, how have things been? You're up there in Sacramento. Was a little different than it is down here in San Diego. It might even be hotter up there where you are.
Yeah, it's the hottest right now is about not at this moment, but or like during the day it's like 92, 93. So yeah, it's probably a lot different than San Diego, I would imagine, for sure.
Yeah. So, guys, we've all talked about it and speculated about this Broncos sale. Well, it finally went through, and it went through to a group that includes former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and the Broncos were purchased for $4.65 billion.
But they're a bargain at any price, James.
I got that in my wallet.
Don, you got your debit card out?
I have to put that on my American Express.
Yeah, I don't have to fill out the black one for that. I can just use the regular. But Mike, what did you think about the group that they had been sold to? I mean, there were hints that it was going to be Byron Allen's group. But we did seem. It seems like with this group we get a 2-for-1. We get not only do we get a black minority owner, but she's also a woman.
Yeah, that's true. That's something I did not think about. I think that's great. Hopefully, this will be a start of change. I mean, we've been talking about that, and this is what the kind of change that the NFL needs to see, because the more that we incorporate people of color and gender, the better off we're going to be. Or at least the NFL is going to be. And this is a great step, 100%.
Well, I'm going to break out the music here because on your turntable. Don't give a what that's in here, 'cause I'm a rider, getting down, going hard, baby, we don't stop. Don't give a what that's in here. Well, if we can't say anything else about Condoleezza Rice, uh, her purchase of being a minority partner in the Denver Broncos just means I'm rich, bitch. I mean, come on now. So whether we agree with her politics or not, Donna, what do you
Don't
think
matter.
about her being a part owner of the Denver Broncos?
Well, I've heard rumors in the past several years ago that her dream job, because remember a lot of people trying to get her to run for president, but she said her dream job was
In
to be the commissioner in the NFL or own an NFL franchise. So she is getting to accomplish that dream. I mean, as far as NFL commissioners, I think Pete Rozelle was
Mhm.
like the god.
Oh yeah.
But we've had shit commissioners ever since, and
Mhm.
so I'd say, hey, why not Condi Rice? Why not? I've heard her speak about football.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she used to date the head coach at Notre Dame. Help me out, Bill.
She's dated Gene Washington and Tyrone Willingham.
Tyrone Willingham. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I mean, the lady knows her shit. So and I've always been kind of a little bit of a closet Broncos fan. My cousin Jeff was a consultant with him. He coached at Air Force Academy, and then he was a special teams consultant. So he knows Elway. He knows the Coors family. So I've always had that kind of.
Did you know Ted Sundquist when Ted was there? Speaking of Air Force,
I'm sure he did. Yeah. So Jeff is he's a retired Colonel Air Force, and he graduated from the Air Force Academy, and he spent 4 years flying B-24s. Oh, no, I'm sorry, B-52s. I'm sorry, and coach. I'm trying to think of the guy, the coach of Air Force.
oh, you mean Fisher?
No. Before that,
Wow, before Fisher DeBerry. Okay.
no.
So-
It was
Troy Calhoun or Fisher DeBerry?
Ken Hatfield.
Oh, Hatfield. That is going back. Okay. Yeah.
So he played for Hatfield, and then Hatfield asked him to come coach special teams coordinator, and so he did. And then Hatfield took the job at Arkansas, but Fisher DeBerry kept Jeff around, and so Jeff spent the majority of his Air Force career coaching at Air Force Academy.
Oh.
And so he has a house in Colorado Springs, but when he retired from the Air Force, he was a consultant with the Broncos. And when I was up in Denver, he got me a little backstage tour of, Mile High Stadium. And
That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice. So, yeah, I've always been kind of a closet Bronco fan, the AFC.
Bill, it seems like this family, and it seems to have its, financial tentacles in all of Colorado sports. The Avalanche, the baseball team. I mean,
Everybody, yes.
what did you think about this alliance, and especially the inclusion of Condoleezza Rice?
Well, they have a lot of money. I mean, I don't think that's news really. And I mean, it sounds funny to say, but the Denver market is one that is manageable if you are super rich, where you could own essentially everything. Unlike a place like, say, New York or Los Angeles, where you have to compete with like 18 other billionaires. There's only a couple of billionaires to compete with in a market like this one. So you could conceivably own, like I said, pretty much everything. You could just buy it all up. I'll take it all. Wrap it all up. What else do you have? I mean, it's difficult to think about the kind of lifestyle we're thinking of, where you just look at a city and a market and you think, I would like to own all of it. Give it to me all. But that's what we're talking about. One of the cool things, I guess, about being extraordinarily crazy, insanely, obscenely rich, and I can only imagine what it must be like, is that you can look at things and like, you know what? I would like to complete the set, right? I don't want to break up the set. I mean, if I'm buying the Broncos, I guess I should take the rest of the teams off somebody's hands.
Yeah, as I said, the family owns almost all of Colorado sports, including the Rockies, the Avalanche, and a couple other minor league soccer teams as well. But Bill, Mahomes has been under fire this week. One of the remarks that he made is that the reason why they blew that 21-3 lead to the Bengals was that they were playing not to lose. Do you think that Mahomes has more, should have, or take more responsibility for that loss?
Well, I mean, it clearly wasn't his best game, but I think he's been given the right amount of responsibility. I mean, unless somebody's out here letting him off the hook, and I just don't know about it, but I believe he got criticized, right? I mean, I thought he did pretty much fairly for particularly later in that game the way he played, because especially since we're so used to seeing him basically wizard things up late in games where they're behind. So I think people rightly said both regarding the coaching. I mean, and I'm as big an Andy Reid fan and defender as you're likely to find, but that was also not his best work. The defense didn't exactly play its best. Like, there's nobody who killed it on the Kansas City side in that game. Nobody can say, "Oh man, okay, we lost, but I had a great game." Right? I mean, everybody had moments where they were less than awesome. And as a team, I don't think that was. I mean, I think they would tell you if they were here that as a team, this was not anything close to their best work.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with Bill. It was disappointing. This is a better team that if given 21-3 lead in 9 out of 10 opportunities would have won the game.
Yep.
As far as taking more responsibility, he's the team captain, and if you're up 21-3 and you lose, in a game you shouldn't be losing. Yeah, I agree. You need to be more than just a fluff off kind of excuse where, oh yeah, we were just whatever. I don't know. We were just playing not to lose. Whatever. I don't care. You should care, and you should have gotten it done. And so, yeah, I think he definitely should have put more of the emphasis on himself than the team.
What's your thoughts on that, Don?
Well, you're up 21-3. Mahomes doesn't play safety, doesn't play cornerback. He's not a defensive guy. But let's not forget, Joe freaking Burrows is pretty damn good for Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. He's good.
So let's give some credit to Cincinnati in the way they did it with their rookie quarterback. So, I mean, Mahomes is good, but, we got some great quarterbacks in the league right now. We got, like I said, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. I mean, the AFC is very talented as far as that goes. So the fact that the Chiefs were in the AFC Championship game says a lot. But you're up 21-3. I mean, the offense pretty much did their job. I mean, the defenses, they got to step it up. Now, granted, Mahomes could have, maybe put his foot more on the pedal, but I think you got to give a lot of credit to what Cincinnati did. Cincinnati has a lot of film on the Kansas City offense and their defense, and so I think Burrow just exploited that.
Don, who do you think has the better year this year, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen?
So you're not giving me the Joe Burrow option. I'm going to say probably Mahomes just because he's the veteran. He's been there before. Josh Allen is a little bit younger, and his time is still coming. He's still developing. He's a damn good quarterback, but I think just the fact that Kansas City has been there and they have that experience, I think that will translate to Mahomes having a slightly better year.
What do you think there, Mike?
Are we talking fantasy or are we talking like
We're talking about real
real?
time.
I think Josh Allen will still have better numbers, better seasonal numbers than Josh Allen, but it won't be too much of a difference. It's going to be pretty close.
Bill, what do you think? I mean, is Juju Smith-Schuster going to be, his go-to guy? And I mean, how much of this depends upon Juju's being able to adapt to the Chiefs' offense?
Well, I think Juju's going to adapt just fine to the Chiefs' offense. And I think he's going to do fairly well. But the go-to guy is Travis Kelce. Don't get it twisted. I mean, I think Kelsey's going to go for like 1,039 receiving yards and, I don't know, 8 touchdowns. I mean, he's going to have a big year. I think that Juju will probably be in, maybe second place in targets, and he'll have a nice solid season too. He may break the 1,000-yard mark as well. But I think the running backs are going to be really deployed a lot in the passing game this year. And that's one reason why I think you're going to see they're going to look different on offense. And let's not forget, Sky Moore is a really good football player, people. I've been talking about him for a while. I believe he's at least 800 yards receiving, and I think more. I think he's 800-plus yards receiving, and he's at least 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to, together with what they get from the running backs, what they always get from Kelce, only I think it's going to be a little bit of an uptick. He's probably going to get maybe another target per game over what he got last season. So 17, maybe even a target and a half. So what's that? 25-ish, 26-ish more targets. And I think he's going to produce because he's Travis Kelce. And they scheme some really nice stuff up for him. And he's so smart. And once again, a former quarterback, he's so smart. He thinks along with the quarterback at a high level. So the people predicting doom and gloom for their offense either just don't know better, or they just, it's wishful thinking. There are people who just don't want to see their offense be good. They may not have as many like 48-second drives this year as they may have had in the past, but slap another minute and a half or 2 minutes on those drives. They're still going to score a lot.
Mike, what do you think about that? Can Kansas City win with Kelce being the primary target?
If he is the primary target, I'm sort of a little disagree with Bill. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the primary target. But Travis Kelce, it's like 1A, 1B, right? Like how it was with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. They're both going to be very much heavily involved in this offense. So, but I do believe that Juju Smith-Schuster is the 1A.
Come on, Don, break the tie here. Is it going to be Travis Kelce? Is it going to be Juju? And as I said, do you think the Chiefs can win if Kelce is the primary receiver?
Well, I think it'll be. I think Juju will be the go-to guy. But keep in mind, that it's a very similar situation the Cowboys had when they had Michael Irvin. You had Michael Irvin. You also had a guy named Jay Novacek who was pretty damn good. So
Alvin Harper.
Yeah, had Alvin Harper for a couple of years. So, the tight end to me is probably one of the most important positions in your offense. You got to block, got to catch. We talked last week about the great tight ends of pro football, and I think Kelce is in that conversation when it's crucial with. So, yeah, let's not fool ourselves. Just because someone's getting more, receiving yards doesn't mean that the other guy is not more valuable. If that makes sense.
Sure. Oh no, totally. Yeah.
Not sure, Don, if the football gods might not punish you for putting Irvin and Juju in the same sentence, but I'll kind of move on though. But Donna Colin Coward says that the Raiders quarterback is the most underrated uh, quarterback in the NFL. What's your thoughts on David Carr?
I think David Carr is a great quarterback. He probably doesn't get the accolades that we're talking about, like Josh Allen and, of course, Tom Brady and Mahomes. But I think he, you know, given the right supporting cast, and I think they're almost there. I think he will definitely lead them to the playoffs. He just hasn't had the supporting cast that some of his other guys have had. But I do. I'm not saying he's the most underrated, but he's in the conversation for sure. So I think, as much as I usually disagree with Colin Cowherd, I think he might be on this.
Yeah, it's not hard to disagree with that guy.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike? When you look at Carr's, volume of work, and you think of how many offensive coordinators he's had in the last 6 years, what's your thoughts on Carr, Mike?
I think he's been underrated for years now, and is still underrated. I think he's getting a lot more respect, but I think part of that respect comes with the fact that Devontae Adams is now there, so they're paying a little bit more attention to him. But he's been so underrated; it's gross. I'm not going to say, as Don put it, I'm not going to put him in the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen mold, but he's more than just a serviceable quarterback. He's pretty dang good. And if he does make the playoffs, and if he does get a Super Bowl ring, then talk of Hall of Fame might follow that. And that's how good he is.
Bill, what are your thoughts on Mr. Carr?
Yes. So I'm not going to comment on David Carr, though that's who you asked about. I'm going to talk about his younger brother, Derek.
Let's not talk about David. Poor guy.
You almost got me there, James. But no, I'm going to talk about Derek Carr instead. I've been on D8 since his sophomore year at Fresno State. And I thought he was underrated in college. I was shocked that the Browns didn't take him. The Browns that year had 2 first-round draft picks. I thought for sure they would take him with their second of those 2 first-round draft picks that came out. But they shall rue that day.
Oh, yeah.
Let the ruing begin.
You know how they got that pick? That was the pick that Trent Richardson was sent to the Colts for them. And then they ended up – everybody was like, no, the Colts got a horrible trade in that. They traded for Trent. No, did you see who the Browns picked? I think – in probably one of the world's worst trades history ever, Trent Richardson and what's his name?
Also took the corner from Oklahoma State who was out of the league in 4 years. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The quarterback. They got
quarterback. Brandon Wheaton.
No, it wasn't Wheaton. It was the guy that burnt. What's his name? The one that partied too much and
Jonathan Paul Manziel.
Yes, that's his name, Manziel. I knew you'd get there.
Yes, Jonathan Paul Manziel. But yes, so yeah, that was not a great. They did not do a lot with those 2 first-round draft picks. So as I pointed out, if that second of those 2 first-round draft picks instead been spent on Derek Carr, they'd be in a very different situation now in Cleveland.
Yeah.
He's I think finally people have woken up to how good he is. He has played behind some extremely poor offensive lines in his career. He has played on teams where their best receiving threat was definitely their tight end, as I think Mike will back me up on this, or anyone who's watched the Raiders will back me up on this. So now, instead of it being Waller, Renfro, and Zay Jones and, guys who wandered through Keelan Doss, shout out to Keelan Doss. But instead of it being those kinds of guys, they're going to have his old friend, right? Almost a 10-year friendship, reunited with Devontae Adams, who is a first-tier wide receiver. And while Carr might not be in that top elite tier, the guys in the top tier are all guys who we know are definitely headed to the Hall of Fame, right? There's no doubt in our minds they're headed to the Hall of Fame. Guys in that second tier, like Matt Stafford, are guys, if the right things happen, they head to the Hall of Fame. Like Mike Stafford is a guy that has gone from a, 20 percentile chance of making the Hall of Fame to I'd say 55 percentile chance. One Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
Which is why I hate that is one thing. The way that guy is perceived entirely, which is just dumb, but whatever. But it's where we are as football fans, I guess, and football writers. But as you just said, if they win a Super Bowl this year, all of a sudden people start talking about Derek Carr. And he's the number one passer in the history of the franchise, which is true. He's already surpassed all but I think one of Stabler's records, and he'll break the one he hasn't broken this year unless he gets hurt like 3 games in the season. And that's a fairly storied franchise. He's always been mentally and physically tough.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him play through most of his last year at Fresno State with a sports hernia. I saw him play against a very superior USC team with a very inferior Fresno State team in a bowl game.
Almost won.
And almost won, still fighting through that same damn sports hernia. Yep. Think of how guys just sit out of bowl games because he played in this damn bowl game with a sports hernia and almost beat USC. So I've been on Carr for a very long time, right? This is not news to me. And it just seems like the rest of the world's finally catching up to him. That's what it feels like to me. I have him down over 4,000 yards passing this year and probably, 34-ish touchdowns.
Bill, a noted Patriot, retired today.
Yep.
Talk about the career of Mr. James White.
So, James White, a.k.a. Kevin Falk, a.k.a. Rex Burkhead, a.k.a. I'm kind of making a joke, but he clearly fit into a defined role, right?
Yes.
Okay, we need a running back. He needs to be 5'8.5", quick but not too fast, with great hands. He has to be able to block at least enough that we keep him in the block. He doesn't embarrass himself. And somehow it's like they have a machine that makes these guys. They've had one of these guys in New England continuously for 20 years. And it just feels like they just changed the name and occasionally the color of the guy. But it's kind of the same guy. So the exact same remarks I would give you about Kevin Falk or Rex Burkhead or Brandon Bolden's slightly larger, but side of the same dude, just a little bit bigger. But Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis is the largest version of them. But they're all kind of the same dude. And so he did the running back thing for the Patriots as well as most of the other guys did that running back Patriot thing that they do, where you get 16 touches, half of them are rushes, half of them are receptions, and you get, 60-something total yards and a touchdown. Ta-da! And so, he had a solid, if very unspectacular NFL career, and he will always have a warm spot in the hearts of New England fans. And the next guy who does what he did will be the same guy.
Don, what did you think about the career of James White?
Oh, his career was, spectacular. We can't say a whole lot more than that. I think he probably is not going to get some of the accolades that some of the guys we talked about last week, but he was a very productive, running back. He pretty good out of the backfield, catching passes, and kind of underrated as a blocker.
Yep.
Mike, he might have been underrated as a blocker, but he always had a lot of fantasy value.
He did. Just based on the fact that he'd catch 5 or 6 passes a game and then score a touchdown. I mean, there was a couple seasons in there where he was the most scoring running back as far as touchdowns go. So he played great. Now we'll see what Pierre Strong does. I guess he's going to be the next guy up for the Patriots in that position. He's more of a runner than James White was, but someone who can catch some passes as well. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, where they're like, you know what, we're thinking about going James White over you. We could either release you or whatever, and maybe he just said, you know what, I'm just done. Which after injuries the last couple seasons and death in the family, maybe he's just like, you know, I just want to be home and wife and kids, if he has wife and kids, whatever, I don't know. But I think that's where he's headed.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about Pierre Strong is, unlike all of the other guys on that list that goes back to 2000 and whatever, when Belichick gets there, he's a 4.39 guy. He's sub 4.4. That describes none of the others. So
Right.
they've sort of broken the mold a little bit.
Mhm.
None of the other guys were very fast. Some of them were quick, but none of them were blazers until now.
Yep.
Mike, it's been, kind of talked about all week about the offensive struggles of the Pats, and how they struggled in training camp, and they don't have an offensive coordinator and all that. What do you think about them not having an offensive coordinator, or have an offensive coordinator by committee? And who wins the most games this season, the Jags or the Pats?
Wow. Going there, that low for the Patriots. Wow. Yeah, their offensive struggles are definitely real. They're slow team. Mac Jones is okay. He's accurate, but he's not going to be a blazer out there. He's not going to take off and run with the ball. He's not exciting. He's just someone that is going to be accurate in between short and intermediate routes. And then you got just boring guys like Jacoby Myers and you have Devontae Parker there now. He's not so boring, but Mac Jones can't get the ball to him anyways. Tyquan Thornton is the rookie. He's electrifying, but again, Mac Jones. So it's a very, very, very boring offense and not very good one at that as well. If they can't beat out the Jags in an NFL record, then oh boy. Wow. So I will say that the Patriots will outlast the Jaguars as far as record goes.
Don, what's your thoughts on the Patriots offense and who wins the most games, the Jags or the Pats?
I think just going into this season, I think the Patriots will have a better record. It would not surprise me if the Jags and turn some heads and pull some shockers, but I think the trajectory of the Jags is definitely up because they can go much slower. So, I think some of the moves they made in the offseason and draft, I think the Jags will be greatly improved. But I just think that right now at this stage, I think the Patriots will have a better record.
Bill, you concur?
You're muted, Bill.
You're muted. We can't hear you. You're muted. Unmute your mic.
Mike.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Right. Okay.
There
now
you go. Yeah, now we can hear you.
Now you can hear me. So, I mean, at first I thought you were joking or messing around, but now I realize you are indeed serious. While I think the Jags will win a game or two that people don't think they'll win this season, I don't think they'll be that close to the Patriots. The Patriots are an experimental team. They do certain things almost on purpose to probe for information, it seems. Now, Matt Patricia being involved in offensive play calling, admittedly, gives me a little bit of indigestion. And thankfully, I'm not a Patriots fan because it would give me more than just indigestion if I had to think about Matt Patricia being involved in offensive play calling. But they'll figure it out.
I think he's bringing his playbook from Detroit.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I do think they will get better. I think they'll figure it out. They will not be one of the more exciting offenses, though. Mike's right about that. I think that Pierre Strong will help because he'll give them something they just have never had. I mean, they've had Corey Dillon, in the early days at one point when they got him from the Bengals, when the Bengals, not surprisingly, decided they didn't want to pay an older running back. And he had a nice couple of years there. And, I mean, not that he was blazing fast, but he's been faster than the Antoine Smiths, the Ben Jarvis, Green Ellises. I mean, it's a long list of dudes. Sony Michel had decent speed, but not sub 4.4. I mean, I'm going to go out on probably not much of a limb. I think he's probably the fastest running back with a verifiable 40, at least we have in the history of the franchise. I can't think of a single. The next fastest guy was Robert Edwards with a 4.44, who unfortunately lost his career out of all things, the Pro Bowl in the sand. And then all the rest of them have been, I'm going to say plotters, but medium to below medium speed guys. That's my fun way to, a fair way to put it. But this is their first blazing fast running back, probably in the history of the team. So if they can figure him out and get him in space a little bit, you might get some cheapies, you know what I mean? Like you get 2 good blocks and that could be it. So that might be their source of excitement. And if they can, reverses, double reverses, something to get Tyquan Thornton in space, who might be he's right there with Tyreek Hill. He's one of the fastest guys. He's one of the fastest guys in the league. He's in the top 3 or 4 fastest guys in the league easily. And he might be number 1. I mean, I'd like to see a race between the two.
Well, Tyreek is always up for a race. He'll definitely put his money where his mouth is.
I like that about him. I'd love to see it.
Bill, the Rams gave Sean McVay an extension. We haven't heard the details yet. But when you look at the totality of the Rams, you have some bad boys that come there and resurrect their careers. You have some guys that, that maybe, other teams have given up on them. They come there all of a sudden, things gel. What do you think? Are the Rams the best run organization right now in the NFL?
Ooh, that's tough. They're one of the best run. I don't know if I'm ready to say number 1, numero uno by themselves. I mean, despite what happened to the Chiefs in the playoffs last year, that's an incredibly well-run organization. They've been really good for a while. And we just took some shots at the Patriots. But they have had a really nice run there, too. And, I mean, this is probably going to be a bad year for the Steelers. But, I mean, they're sort of the model by which other teams measure themselves, right? To go as many years as they have without having a losing season in the NFL, which is designed to eventually bring you down, right? Everything they do and the way they build the league is supposed to prevent you from winning every year or having a winning season every year, right? So in a salary cap league, hard salary cap league, right? Not like baseball or whatever, where the salary cap is like a suggestion. But in the NFL, it's a hard cap, and they make it so at some point you're going to lose some of your best players. And the draft, you get punished a little bit in the draft when you're good because you pick later. So to be consistently good for a really long time, I'm not ready to put the Rams there yet. You know what I mean? Like they've been at the party a few times, but they don't have like a decade's worth of consistent winning. While some franchises have a decades plus worth of consistent winning, James. So no, I'm not ready to push them above teams like the Patriots or even the Steelers or the Chiefs.
Don, what's your thoughts?
In regards to this,
are the Rams the best run organization in football?
Excuse me. Well, they're better run than the Texans, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. Or the Jaguars.
But you can make the case for the Rams. They have a good system going. I like some of the moves they made. So I'm not saying they're the top organization in the NFL, but they're probably in the top 3 for sure.
Mike,
Just from what they've been doing.
Yes, sir.
what's your thoughts on that?
I agree with Bill. I think that you need to have a lot longer run at this. Now, do they look like they're going to be a top organization? Yeah, I think their pathway so far over the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, you go to the Super Bowl twice, you win one, you put it all on the line to get Matthew Stafford, and you win. I mean, those are really crucial moves that you have to make. That takes a lot of guts. But Bill forgot one team, the Colts. And the Colts have been just another one of those that since Peyton Manning has come into the league has been, being a fan of the Colts really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's more of the fact that if you look at the longevity of the Colts, unfortunately they didn't win more than one Super Bowl, but they went one more time, lost to the Saints in a crazy game that they probably shouldn't have lost. But I think the Rams are on their way though, very, very much so.
Mike, talk to us about the Colts training camp.
Everything looks pretty good. Julian Blackman, who tore his ACL, who they missed desperately last year, it looks very good. He looks like he hasn't had any problems coming back. Of course, Jonathan Taylor looks like Jonathan Taylor, so that's good news. Matt Ryan was having a fantastic camp until recently, but he threw 2 interceptions in 11-on-11 drills. But whatever. Everybody's tend to have bad practice here and there. And then let's see. Paris Campbell looks like he might be solidifying the second spot, but pulled the hammy. Guy hurt again.
A shocker. Paris Campbell got hurt.
Shocking, what? Right? That's almost like shocking, like Lou Ferrigno turning into the Incredible Hulk. You just don't expect it. It looks very good. They look very like they're going to be a competitive team. We'll see. They'll have to get over the hurdle of the Titans, but they definitely look a lot sharper and a lot better. So there's great hope for them.
Mike, 5 years ago today, the Bills head coach and GM Sean McDermott, the
Brandon Beane,
and GM Brandon Beane made the trade that led to the drafting of Josh Allen, and the 3rd round pick they got from the Eagles resulted in them picking up Harrison Phillips. Mike, intuition or just good drafting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really want to go good drafting. I do, but the way that NFL works, it's more probably intuition than it is good drafting, because when you draft players, especially, I mean, the first round has a 50% failure rate. That's how tough it is in the NFL. So to say that they were just hitting on all cylinders, they really got lucky. Brian Dable turned Josh Allen around. Hopefully he can do the same thing for Daniel Jones. But I got to go with intuition over good drafting, because you can have bad drafting, I think, but good drafting, that requires some luck. And if it requires some luck, then you have to put in intuition.
Don, what's your thoughts? Don?
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that? Was it just intuition that they ended up picking Josh Allen and getting that great 3rd round pick from the Eagles? Or turning that pick from the Eagles into a great pick?
Yeah. Some people call it luck, intuition, but it happened. I think it was I think the Bills did their homework on Josh Allen, and they got him. I mean, that's just he was from he wasn't from like a top school. I mean, he was
No.
Wyoming, so
Yeah.
But
You grew up right around me.
yeah. So it's, call it intuition or luck, but probably more of an educated pick, I guess I would say.
Come on, Bill. Sean
Well-
McDermott, you got to tell me they got a dynasty board back there, right? They've been following this kid since he was in Pop Warner, right?
Well, here's what I will tell you. It's funny you should mention that because he was a very late developing prospect, right? He was a 1 or 2 star, depending on who you ask, and ends up going the junior college route. Sort of like similar story to another kid from his not too far away, Aaron Charles Rodgers, right? Another 1 or 2 star recruit who has to go the junior college route. Now the difference is Rodgers improved dramatically and quickly, right? And part of that, Abdali is doing to working with Jeff, quarterback guru, Jeff. Oh God, well, he goes to Cal and gets coached up, right? Coached all the smithereens and takes off like a rocket ship. Now, obviously, with Josh Allen, he came along much more slowly, and I may have mentioned this before. His production profile, when adjusted for era, is one of 3 from 1958 forward for a guy who's produced like that, who's become, forget Hall of Fame or MVP level. Only 3 guys with a production profile like his have been 60-game starters in the NFL at quarterback. So he's overcome a lot to get to where he is. And Brian Daboll deserves certainly some of that credit and his own unstinting work ethic. The kid works. His mechanics were an utter mess at one point. And he got better. I mean, we all remember the time when he was, hitting camera drones, hitting sideline reporters with passes. You remember this? I mean, no one wiped my memory. I remember how utterly overwhelmed he looked early. And I was like, yep, I got that one right when I was telling people, nope, this isn't going to work out. And to his credit, he's proven me wrong. He went from being a guy that I was going to put in my called that one list when, at the end of halfway through his second year in the league, I was pretty darn confident, right? Rookie year, terrible.
It was awful. He was so
really,
bad.
really awful. In his second year as a starter, it's like, okay, flashes, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And I was like, okay, this is what he's going to be the rest of his career. He'll do just enough to keep people giving him chances, but he's always going to mess up, right? All that talent. I think I've written up in some place that sort of like the most likely scenario is a bigger, faster Kerry Collins, right? A guy that does enough at certain situations where something, oh, yeah. And then something happens. We're like, right? To his credit, he's turned it around. Right. And he's looking like a guy who at least will play at a elite or close to elite level the rest of his career, which I admit openly I did not see coming. So yes, I think that he's going to be very good. They got, I wouldn't say lucky. It's like drawing to an inside straight. Like you were trying to do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right? It wasn't like it just happened. Now you shouldn't build your plan around drawing to an inside straight too often, because that probably won't, you'll get up big on the house, but the house will get it all back at some extra if you keep trying to do that. But they did it. So hats off to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Like I said, 5 years ago today.
Wow.
Time
flies, man.
It really does.
Jesus.
The Seahawks, it looks like they're going to open the season with Geno Smith as their starting quarterback.
Well, of course.
Mike, how much is this going to affect Tyler Lockett's numbers, real time and fantasy time?
I think it'll affect more DK Metcalf than it will be Tyler Lockett, just because Geno Smith is more of a short-term intermediate guy, which is where Tyler Lockett goes. So DK Metcalf is going to suffer greatly here if that's the case. I still don't think Geno Smith is the starting quarterback by week 1. I think it's going to be Drew Lock. Drew Lock's having great practices. We'll see. I know that Geno Smith has been talked about being the number 1 guy, but Drew Lock gives him DK Metcalf factor, and it's I think that is what's going to win him the job. So Tyler Lockett should be okay, but DK Metcalf, no, don't. Yeah, I wouldn't expect much out of him.
Bill.
I think that Geno Smith will be the day 1 starter, but I agree that at some point they may pull the plug on the Geno Smith experiment and run Drew Lock out there. It sort of comes down to this: do you want to win more games, but win them in a very, very, very unpleasant to watch football kind of way?
Very boring.
Or would you rather lose some games but have some fun doing it? So
Right.
I wonder what – I mean, Pete Carroll is 70. I don't know if he has the patience to develop a talented but very erratic young quarterback. So I think for that reason, primarily, he's not going to say, yeah, Drew, go out there and, Drew, lock it up. Because, I mean, he's 70 years old, man. I mean, it's hard to watch your future in the hands of Drew Lock when you're 70, right? I mean, he's in good shape for a man his age, but that's still a lot of work on one's heart. So, yeah, I agree at some point. I mean, now, if Geno goes out there and has a career year, which I am not predicting, I would make clear I am not predicting that, then Drew Lock is trade bait at that point because there's still people who believe in him out there. And this team's drafting another quarterback. Like, I mean, I feel very confident in saying that that the Seattle Seahawks will be drafting a quarterback anyway. It's going to be a really nice quarterback class next year. The ACC, we just talked about, the ACC alone may have 5 or 6 quarterbacks that go in the first 3 or 4 rounds in the ACC alone. So, yes, for both these guys, it's a make myself attractive to my next team kind of year anyway. I don't think either of these guys is seen as the future in Seattle, quite frankly.
No.
Don, I don't think you were here the week that we did our offensive goats at each position.
I was.
Were you? Okay. Well,
'Cause I kept telling you Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, he kept saying
okay.
Yeah.
because he's completely non-biased.
Well, this week, Don, we're going to do the defensive, and I'm going to start out with the edge rushers. And Bill, no additions here now. Okay.
Sure.
So, Don, edge rushers, LT, Reggie White, Bruce Smith.
Oof.
Very tough group there, but I'm going to go with Mr. Reggie White. I had a chance to actually in high school. I went to an FCA conference and I got to hang out with Reggie White. He was at Tennessee at the time, and great guy, very gregarious. Sad that we lost him at a relatively young age, but I'll go Reggie White day and night.
Okay. And your number 2?
I gotta go LT. The hit he put on Theismann, that still gives me the gibbers.
Much like the hit, the Daryl Stingley hit that I still remember.
Oh my God.
But
My dad was at that game.
oh my goodness, oh man, but hey, that was one you knew as soon as the contact was made. Is like he's not getting up. But anyway, that was a different time. That was when I played corner, and you didn't have to be fast; you just had to be vicious. But anyway, a whole different story. Mike, what's your take on those 3?
I'm going to go from right to left in that order. I'm going to go Bruce Smith, number 1. Reggie White number 2, and LT number 3. And the reason being is that I think that if you're looking at who the GOAT is, the GOAT has to be able to play in any era. And I don't think LT could play in today's game. I really don't. I think he'd get stifled. I think he would get, blocked, manhandled. He was a guy that struggled against long-armed offensive tackles, and that's all there is now. And he built on speed with short arms, and you can beat a guard, but you can't beat a tackle that way. So LT, I would never consider a GOAT.
Let's see, Bill. We got one Reggie White. We got one Bruce Smith. Who's yours?
So I didn't get to go to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes conference, but I did get to grow up in Tidewater, Virginia. And I got a chance to see both Lawrence Taylor and Bruce Smith in high school. Bruce Smith was at Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk, Virginia. So when I was going to Lake Taylor Junior High School, our varsity played against their varsity, and I got a chance to see a kid named Plug Melton and obviously Bruce Smith. They had these 2 D tackles who were freaks of nature. Both of these guys were over 300 pounds. Plug must have been 305 maybe, and I'm not Reggie, but Bruce was over 300 at the time as well. He was out of shape, but still ludicrously athletic, even out of shape. He showed up at Virginia Tech at 298. And then slowly worked on his body, and ended up his career playing in about 272. And he was ridiculous. And then both Torrey and Tomas Johnson, 2 of my cousins, both went to Lafayette High School in Williamsburg, Virginia. So I got to see both of them play a lot of basketball and football with Lawrence Taylor. And Lawrence Taylor was a basketball player first. Came to football a little late. He was a terror. An utter and complete terror. He was an utter and complete terror in high school. He was an utter and complete terror in college. An utter and complete terror in the NFL, and literally changed the way people block things. Like, people change the way they design blocking schemes for Lawrence Taylor. I'm going to heartily disagree with my friend Mike here about him not being able to play in this era for 2 reasons. One, he was everything that Von Miller is or was or whatever, only better against the run. So he was everything that Von Miller is, but even better against the run. You couldn't play for Bill Parcells if you didn't play the run. That's one of the myths that people bandy about, is that he wasn't good against the run. Bill Parcells would literally not play you if you couldn't play against the run. If you might have a bad rep against the run, but you better not have 2. You better not have 2. Bill Parcells got into everybody, right? Differently, but he got into everybody. He was one of the great mental, bleepers, pick a term, in the history of maybe the world, but definitely football. And people used to complain that he treated Lawrence Taylor differently. He said, because he's different from you. If you want to get treated like that, play like him. And it's sort of like the Dwight Gooden thing, where as great as Lawrence Taylor was, he could have been even greater. He was a guy that had demons, for lack of a way to put it.
Same problem.
And if not for that, the records he would have set are impossible to imagine, because there were times when he was not right, out there just dominating people. And while I know we like to believe that, the tackles of his era were, some of those tackles may not have been the greatest in the world, but he played against some good tackles and gave some of them the business too. He played against the Cowboys more than once in his career, who had really good tackles pretty much the whole time that he was in the league. He had a couple pretty good games against the Cowboys, as I'm sure my friend Donald Hayes remembers. And even when they had a really good group of offensive linemen. So I'm going to disagree that he would have trouble playing in today's game. And especially since they've invented sort of the designated pass rusher, and added to that, they move guys around more nowadays, right? He wouldn't have to face the best left tackle all the time, because he would be rushing from all over the place nowadays, as opposed to lining up at weak outside linebacker play after play after play after play after play.
That's a good point.
Now, when you think about those special pass rush packages where they put all pass rushers on the field, and one of them is Lawrence Taylor, what are you going to do? So, yeah, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to stay Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith. And Reggie White was a maybe greater all-around football player than some of the other guys that we talked about on this list, but he wasn't the best pass rusher. And I thought that was what the assignment was. Reggie was
edge rusher.
right, and see, Reggie was huge, right? I mean, Don, you stood next to him, right? I mean, he was an enormous, mountainous man.
Yep.
And he could have had a Hall of Fame career at defensive tackle.
Yeah,
right?
he could have. Yeah,
could have very easily. He was. That's what makes him so extraordinary is that he was really a defensive tackle body playing defensive end.
Defense end. Yep.
You have a pure defensive end body in Bruce. Well, once he got down to his right body weight, playing defensive end in Bruce Smith, and then obviously, really, LT is a linebacker. So there's 3 different body types. So it's a little weird comparison you're asking us to make. But as a pure pass rusher, I mean, guys are still watching. Guys will watch Lawrence Taylor 50 years from now to try to pick up things. Like I can never pick against him because every person I've ever talked to who teaches pass rushing, including Chip Smith, say that they start with Lawrence Taylor when they're teaching guys how to rush the passer.
Bill, defensive tackles: Aaron Jones, Joe Green, or Deacon Jones?
I don't think you mean Aaron Jones.
I do mean Aaron Jones.
I think you mean Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. I like when you double down so confidently.
Aaron
That was my favorite part. When you were like, aha, I got this one. I know what I'm talking about. Man.
Aaron Donald, Joe Green, and Deacon Jones.
Yeah. Well, Deacon Jones was a defensive end, not a defensive tackle. So this is a very strange list you put together here. Deacon. Now, Bob Lilly was a tackle. Alan Page was a tackle.
Yeah, Alan Page.
But yeah, not Deacon. Deacon was an end. Merlin Olsen was a tackle.
Merlin Olsen.
Yeah. So the 2 tackles on that fearsome foursome with the Rams were Merlin Olsen and originally Rosie Greer, and then later Roger Brown. So Deacon was an end, and so was Lamar Lundy. So those guys were ends. But so I'm going to modify this question for you, James, since only 2 of the guys on this list are tackles. I'm going to add another tackle. What the heck? Let's say Merlin Olsen. Let's see. I'm going to go Aaron Donald as much as I usually, I skew old usually. But I've seen Aaron Donald do things I just haven't seen people do. I mean, like people. Forget tackles. Like he makes plays that just don't look like plays tackles should make. He's
like Reggie White, the guy that plays defensive tackle who can play defensive end.
Or linebacker. Have you seen
linebacker
drills?
Yeah.
I watched Aaron Donald do linebacker drills, and if I didn't know it was Aaron Donald, if you told me there's a 240-pound linebacker, I would believe you because of the way he looked. I mean, he does these man turns and runs to coverage. Like, what the hell? Now, you would never have him drop in coverage because why would you do that? But he would do it and look beautiful doing it. But like, don't do that.
He doesn't have enough speed to get back there.
Don't do that. But he would look.
He looks good though.
He looks so good doing all these things that people 40, 50, 60 pounds lighter do. I mean, Jeremiah Trotter wishes he could drop into coverage the way that Aaron Donald does. Aaron Donald is just not right. Like the things he does, that combining his strength, right? His strength is ludicrous, crazy, off the charts. 650 squats, 655 for reps. Who squats 655 for reps? People who do that should have a cape and a secret identity.
Right.
So I would love to pick an old guy. I really would, but I've never seen Aaron Donald before. I don't know if I'll ever see Aaron Donald again.
Bill.
Okay.
Excuse me, Don. I meant to say Don. I'm sorry, Don.
Okay, Don is going to stick with be loyal to the state. I got to go Mean Joe Green because he is a defensive tackle. And so whenever you're tossing your jersey to a little kid and Coca-Cola, got to go Joe Green. And he was mean. He had a nasty side. And so
head slapping. When he first came in the league, it's still head slap. He loved head slapping.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And Go ahead. Okay, so you got me and Joe Green, and then who, Don?
Well, again, we're talking defensive tackles, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to add your list, but Randy White, he was a defensive tackle. But on the list you have, I'd have to go Sam Darnold, I guess. I mean, he's
No, not Sam Darnold.
Yeah, you don't want Sam Darnold there.
Don't fall into James's trap.
what did I say?
You said
Sam
Sam
Darnold.
Darnold.
Quarterback
yeah.
from the Panthers.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
Catching. James has got you ill.
Now, Bill, I'm going to tell you why I included Deacon Jones here, because I'm looking at the article, and it says the voting results. Donald was number one. He earned 39 of 50 votes. The next runner-up was Joe Green. He had 5 votes.
Okay.
And number 3 with 3 votes was Deacon Jones. And Deacon Jones, the reason why, it says that Jaguars reporter Michael Duraco said that Jones' unofficial sack total of 173.5 would be 3rd all-time in NFL history. And he had 3 seasons with at least 20 sacks.
Right.
So
He's
the
still
other
playing
players,
defensive end, like
the other players that were mentioned after Deacon Jones, of course, were Alan Page, John Randall, and Warren Sapp.
Right. So those guys are tackles. So somebody decided to sneak one defensive end onto the list for some reason. I don't know why that is.
And the reasons are sacks, which would be more defensive end than defensive tackles. That's kind of weird. I don't know.
It's a very weird thing to say. I love Deacon Jones, and it would have been harder for me if you'd put him on the other list, because then I would have had a fight with myself, because I have so much respect for him, and he was a pure. I mean, he basically pass rushing as we now know it exists because of David Deacon Jones. Right. I mean, he literally gave us the term sack. People started paying attention to rushing the passer largely because of him. I mean, there've been other great pass rushers, Gino the Giant Marchetti, Jim Cabbage, but. Doug Atkins even, but the person that made it sexy, the same way that Dion made playing corner sexy, David Deacon Jones made playing defensive end sexy. But he might have lined up at tackle a handful of times in his whole career, but he's not a tackle.
Mike, linebackers, Ray Lewis, Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary.
Ooh. Oh my God.
And these guys are all linebackers.
Yes. And they're all Mike linebackers. They're all apples to apples finally.
Yes. I'm going to have to go Mike Singletary number 1. The IQ of Mike Singletary was just insane. Plus you got those eyes. I mean, those wide eyes. Reading. I love it. And then now I'll go Ray Lewis and Dick Butkus number 3. I mean, I love Dick Butkus. The dude was just a terror on the field. But if I have to choose between Mike Singletary, Ray Lewis, and Dick Butkus, I'm going to have to put Butkus 3rd.
Don.
Very difficult choice, but I would have to go Ray Lewis number 1. I mean, that year they won their first Super Bowl, the Ravens. I mean, it was defense. I mean, he led them, and then he willed them to the second one. So, I go Ray Lewis, Singletary, then Butkus.
Bill.
Well, I'm going to make it a clean sweep at the top with Ray Lewis. I'm going to go Butkus 2nd. Though, now this is the one where you got the whole "what would you do in today's game" thing. This is the argument to make here, Mike Alberti, because the game was run on first down, run on second down in those days. Blitz him on third down. And that's what Dick did. I mean, he was actually a surprisingly good in coverage early in his career until his knees completely went. But he was not nearly as good in coverage as, say, Ray Lewis. And that's where Ray Lewis separates himself really from everybody on this list. And Samurai Mike was decent in coverage too, but not like Ray Lewis.
No.
Young Ray Lewis covered like a freaking giant corner. I mean,
Yeah.
it was ludicrous how good he was in coverage early in his career. I don't know if I don't know if I could name 3 better coverage linebackers. I mean, young Jack Ham. It's hard. I mean, like he's in the top 3 coverage linebackers ever, and he was terrific against the run too, obviously. So that's why I've got Ray at the top, because he did both things at such a high level. Buckus was obviously one of the most dangerous, mean, difficult to deal with, and intimidation factor, right? I mean, that's why he wins over anybody, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, when Dick Buckus walks in the room now, men kind of like, Dick Buckus.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
there's people get a little bit weak in the knees now when you
Yep.
walk into a room. So imagine him in his prime. And then Samurai Mike, as much as I love him, and I loved him even at Baylor playing for Grant Taft back in the day. And I mean, his ability to generate power from such a small by linebacker standards body. I mean, he's a big person, but he's a very small NFL linebacker. But that never held him down. He came down the box, dealt with guards who wanted to try to throw him into the stands. He didn't let them do it. He dealt with, once again, I mean, it wasn't quite like Buckus' era where it's run on first down, run on second down all the time. But still, it was a run-dominated league, and he held up in the box, the run game. And when he had to cover, he covered very well. Once again, not quite Ray Lewis well, because, I mean, it's hard to think of people who cover like that. But, yeah, I mean, he was a great linebacker. But I have Buckus for mostly intimidation and just pure, just, my God. I mean, just the terror that you could see some players literally frightened when they took the field to play Buckus. Professional football players, like, oh man, I gotta play against Buckus.
Wasn't he the one where the referee called a penalty on him because he bit someone's ear, and his response was, "If I bit his ear, I'd bit it off."
That was what he said. He said that it wouldn't be like a little nip. If I bit his, right, exactly. You would, there'd be no question because he'd have a big piece of ear in his mouth. He didn't half do things. No, he was. Oh my! I mean, just he's one of those guys on that list of. I mean, both those great Hall of Famers that the Bears drafted in '64 were guys that unfortunately injury kept us from seeing what they really should have ever been. But they both had for about 3 or 4 seasons set a standard that even though their careers were over in 10 years or less, people still talk about them in hushed tones, right? Because of what they did in that short amount of time.
Bill, cornerbacks. Prime time, Charles Woodson or Rod Woodson?
Okay, so this is where my bias is going to show. So, but I'm admitting it. So Charles Woodson was a terrific player and played really well at multiple positions. He played nickel at a high level, or star, or whatever you want to call it. He played free safety at a high level. I mean, he made all pro, I think, at essentially 2.5 positions, if you want to count nickel as a separate position. And Deion Sanders is Deion Sanders, right? And he's the most fun to watch on the list. But for all-around play, people forget. I think Rod Woodson is in the top 3 in NFL history amongst non-offensive players in touchdowns scored, I believe.
Wow.
I think he is. I think Rod Woodson had 18 non-offensive touchdowns.
Jeez.
Yeah. People forget what a great all-around play. He scored a lot. He scored more than Deion on interceptions. And Deion scored on interceptions, but not me, Rod Woodson. And he was a terrific tackler. And this is where both my bias and the fact he's a terrific tackler come into play. Obviously, I've been in love with Rod Woodson since I watched him at Purdue, and I was so thrilled. It's one of those guys where it's like you almost, you get disappointed. It's like, oh, there's no way my team's going to take him because I want him too badly. Like after a while, you just tell yourself to just get over it. And when they took him, I was like, yeah, so sweet God. Yes, there is a God. And he turned out to be exactly what I thought he'd be. And though he wasn't quite Deion's fast, he was fast. I mean, don't forget how fast Rod was. He was the 110 hurdles champ in the Big Ten. So he had plenty of speed. And he was just a tougher guy, frankly, than Deion. So that's why I'm going there. If you put Mark Haynes on this list, I would have had a struggle on that.
Ooh,
Luckily you didn't, James, because that would have been tough.
that's a tough one. Yeah.
That would have been tough. 'Cause
Haynes.
he's basically the perfect cover corner. He had
Yes.
one season where he won he was defensive player of the year, and I think he had 9 shutouts that season where nobody caught a ball on him. 9 games, nobody caught a ball. Dion can't say that. Rob, nobody can say that. 9 games where nobody caught a football.
That's insane.
Mike?
So if we're talking just cover corners, I would go Rod Woodson, primetime Charles Woodson. If we're talking about tackling, I would probably go Charles Woodson, Rod Woodson, primetime.
Fair enough. Yeah.
If we were talking tackling, I don't know if prime time would make this list.
No, you would not be on this list. No, you would not.
Right. I think Rondé Barber might be the third corner if we're talking about the great tackling corner.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
That's a
He
good
might have
point.
been maybe the greatest tackling corner of all time.
Yes, he was good.
Don, what's your thoughts?
I'd have to go Charles Woodson, prime time, then Rod Woodson.
Safeties, Don. Ronnie Lott, Ed Reed, or Brian Dawkins?
Man, I'm going to tell you, when Ronnie Lott hit you, you felt it. When he hit someone, you felt it in this. I mean, that guy would knock living shit out of you. He was good.
You felt it on TV when Ronnie.
Yeah, you did.
Ronnie Lott
Yes,
hit
you did. No, yes, you did. Oh, my
So
goodness.
I'm going to go Ronnie Lott, Ed Reed, and Brian Dawkins.
What's your thoughts there, Mike? I used to have to go take an ice bath after watching Ronnie Lott hit some of those
Right.
guys.
Oh, he'd take off so many heads. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna go with Ed Reed as my number one, just because I think he covered a little bit better than Ronnie Lott. But Ronnie Lott's my number 2, then Brian Dawkins is my number 3.
Bill,
This might be the toughest one yet for me. I love everyone on this list.
Mhm.
I love them all so much. And I watched their entire college and pro careers. You know, obviously, Ronnie Lott was part of one of the greatest safety tandems in college football history. Because wasn't Dennis Smith the other safety on that team?
Wow.
Yeah. Wow is right. Wow is right.
Wow.
And Dennis Smith is a guy that, frankly, should get more Hall of Fame consideration.
Yes, he should. Absolutely.
I never understood why his name doesn't come up more often. God, that's just tough. Oh my God, it's so tough. Because I mean, Ronnie Lott was one of my heroes growing up. But Ed Reed may be essentially the perfect modern free safety. Like that's the one that you're showing kids now. Because you can't play like Ronnie anymore.
No, you'd be thrown
That
out
is-
of the league.
Strictly verboten. You are not allowed to do that anymore. No. Yeah, you can't be turning people off like a light switch. That is frowned upon in this establishment. God, this is hard because I love Ronnie Lott so much. But we're okay. I'm gonna ask a sort of weird qualifying question. So we're talking about the rules of sort of. Are we just comparing them? How do I say this? Do we have to worry about how the game is played now, or can we just use them looking at their own era?
well, if you have Ronnie Lott on that list, you can't be talking about the game now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
with that clarification, I will still put Ronnie Lott first, and then Ed Reed. But it's so close.
It is close. It's really close.
Oof, that's close. Like this one gave me the most trouble. And I mean, Brian Dawkins is one of the top 4 or 5 safeties in the history of the game. I mean, Emlyn Tennell may be this number 2, actually. Luckily, he wasn't on this list. That would have given me so much trouble because he and Ed Reed were basically the versions of each other. I mean, Emlyn Tennell basically invented being a deep safety. Like the position exists because of a young defensive coach who invented being a defensive coordinator, young man from Texas named Tom Landry, invented being a deep safety, the free safety. And the first one was Emlyn Tennell, and still to me the top 3 safeties of all time. And the first strong safety in NFL history of all people actually was Richie Pettibone, believe it or not. Yep.
Let's see. returners and special teamers.
Ooh.
Bill, I'm
Okay.
going to go here with, let's see, number 1, Devin Hester. Number 2, Deion Sanders.
Ooh.
And number 3, and a lot of people might not realize how good he was, but Gale Sayers.
Oh, if they don't realize how good Gale Sayers was, they just haven't watched Gale Sayers for
Yeah, they don't know Gale Sayers.
As a kick returner and a punter, not
That's what I'm
talking about
talking about.
Oh,
If
yeah,
Gale Sayers had only been a kick returner and punt returner, he might have been the first punt returner, kick returner to make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So this is actually this isn't quite as bad as the safety one, but it's close. It's close. I'm going to go with Devin Hester only because he is the guy that basically had a Hall of Fame career pretty much only as, I mean, he played receiver, but not that well.
Not much. And not
Right,
well. Right.
and not that well, right. So, I mean, he's the guy that will make it. If other guys make it as kick and punt returners, it'll be because of him, right? The same way that certain guys made it so other guys can make it at their position. If Rondé makes it, we'll finally have a zone corner because all the other corners that have ever been inducted have only been man corners, right? So finally, he'll break the seal on the Hall of Fame for zone corners. Kevin Hester can break the seal for return guys. And now it gets hard.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, James, damn you. Oh, this is hard. Oh, this is so hard. Oh, I might need a moment. Okay, I'm gonna go Gale Sayers, despite the fact that Deion obviously had much longer. I mean, well, not long. I mean, he had more opportunities later. I mean, he kept going. Basically, his career didn't end at 27 or whatever. And people remember him more. But Gale Sayers' vision in a broken field. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody see like that. See everything when you shouldn't be able to see. Like, people talk about the term eyes in the back of your head. He had eyes on the side of his head, the back of his head, the front of his head, and maybe even the top of his head. Like he would make guys miss that he shouldn't have seen. He couldn't have seen. It's like, how did you? What the? And so I'm going to put him slightly above Deion. Deion obviously is. I mean, this is hard, so hard, so hard. I mean, it would be great if somehow you could, like, just have somebody kick off to each one of those guys 10 times, just watch them all, like, go back to back to back. I would pay money for that, James. I would pay real hard-earned cash to just watch those guys in like equal conditions. Because that's the other thing. Remember, Gale Sayers is playing his home games not in Soldier Field, but Wrigley Field. And Wrigley Field was an utter mess in those days, which is eventually what ended his career, right?
Yeah,
the horrendous field conditions at Wrigley Field because it's a baseball stadium. And early in the season, baseball games were still being played. Oh, it was a mess. So early season games, chunks, it was just a terrible place to play football. Deion Sanders is a different player if he has to play there as opposed to where he played. I promise you that much. Because it's impossible to be the same player when you're playing in those conditions. But yeah, so I'm going to give a slightest of slight edges at the number 2 spot to Gale Sayers, and then Deion is, like it's a photo finish.
Don, your thoughts? Gale Sayers averaged 30.6 yards per kickoff return,
which no one will ever do again, ever.
No.
30.6 yards, Don, per kickoff return.
Yeah.
Your thoughts? Go ahead, Don. Devin Hester, Deion Sanders, Gale Sayers.
I would have to go. We're just talking about return guys. So
return special teams.
Yeah. Well, with special teams, you have to have Bill Bates. I mean, the guy.
He was a true special team. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bauer, Bill Bates. Yeah. Steve.
He made the Pro Bowl. I don't know how many times.
Yeah. Bill Bates was like his position was safety, but I don't think he played maybe 2-3 downs at safety, but he was on kickoff return, punt return. I mean, he was on everything. So Yeah, he was Pro Bowl selection, but since he's not on the list, I can't choose him as a special teams player. So I'll go Hester, and then I never saw Gail Sayers play. I mean, I was too young, but I'm going to take your word for it. So I'll go him. Then the
Let's see. The last category would be kickers and punters. Don, we have Adam Vinatieri, Justin Tucker, Ray Guy.
Well, Ray Guy is the better punter, and Justin Tucker is the greatest kicker. So
he's definitely a better punter than the other two guys. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. But that's like asking, pitcher catcher combo. I mean, we're asking baseball, but given since I can't choose a punter and a kicker, I have to go Ray Guy because they have an award named after him, and he was punting held that football. But I go Ray Guy, then Justin Tucker, then Vinatieri. But Justin Tucker is doing things that will probably never be replicated, just so you know.
Yeah,
and he's also from Austin Westlake, just like Drew Brees, Nick Foles, and Sam Mellinger, and the quarterback at Clemson.
Yeah, once again, kind of showing my age. I remember when Vinatieri was considered, nobody thought that, you'd be able to break Vinatieri's records. That long, run that he had. But Mike?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I think Ray Guy sort of speaks to my heart because of my dad and his fanfare of the 70 Raiders. And then Adam Vinatieri was a kicker for the Colts. Two different positions too. I'm going to go Ray Guy. I'm just going to go Ray Guy just because I don't think there will be ever a punter that will be ever as I don't want to say ever, but how many years it's been since he's retired, and there's been still no punter that's really come close to a Ray Guy kind of situation. Guy just boom kicks, hit it in corner shots. Guy just could do everything and anything at any given moment. And then the kicker, Adam Vinatieri, and then Justin Tucker.
Bill?
I'm going to disagree with Mike real quick. Look up Jarrell Thunderfoot Wilson. Went to the same college, Southern Miss, and he should be in the Hall of Fame, quite frankly.
Thunderfoot.
When I put together my all-time AFL team, he's the punter, not Ray Guy.
Really?
But, so Thunderfoot was something. He was special. He set some records that I don't know if they will be broken for his punting. But yeah, Ray Guy was obviously great. But I'm going to go Justin Tucker because his combination, usually you have tremendously accurate or incredible leg strength. Here we have a guy whose leg is maybe the strongest, certainly one of the strongest of any place kicker in the history of the game. And his accuracy is the greatest in the history of the game. I can't give it because Vinatieri had a good leg, but not Justin Tucker. Not like that. Not like Justin Tucker might kick a 70-yarder in a game someday. Right. He's done it in practice. It's not beyond the realm of possibility he might kick a 70-yarder in a game. It's insane what he does. And yeah, he's number one. Then I'd go Guy, then Vinatieri. Vinatieri we mostly remember because of the when he hit his kicks and what kicks he hit. And he was great for a stupidly long time. By the time he retired, his son was in college. I remember that much. Mm-hmm. So that's saying a lot. Yeah, he had a son who was kicking at, I think, his alma mater, South Dakota State, by the time he retired. He almost pulled a LeBron James and Bronny if he played a couple more years.
Don, always good to see you. And why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening and anything on social media or anywhere you might want to let us know about what's happening down there in Texas. Besides the weather, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before I get the final thoughts, there's a punter named Michael Dixon who plays for Seattle who's pretty damn good too. So
yeah.
if we have this discussion 20 years from now, if we're still around, he'll probably be on that list. My final thoughts. It's good to be back with y'all. Tomorrow I start my first day back at school. I have a faculty work day. We always start on a Friday, have the weekend, and we have a whole week of in-service, which is so much fun. So we're about to kick it off. I'll be doing the live stream for the high school and doing the sub-varsity PA at the stadium. So on Thursday nights, I'll just like I hate it because it's football season, but on Thursday nights I'll be coming in late, so I might be coming around 9:00 to tell in. So, but I'm ready for some football. I'm really awaiting this season. I got offered $1,600 for my UT Alabama tickets.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's crazy. But I'm going to go to the game. I hate to turn down that kind of money, but I'm going to the game.
Don, what happened to was it the strengthening and conditioning for the girls cheerleading team? Was it?
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's the thing I'm doing. I got them. In fact, I met with the cheer coach and I put them on a like a circuit weight training, and I went through some stretching for them. I'm going to work with them, as needed. Their athletic period is different than my off period, so I have to do stuff before school, after school. But yeah, it's an unpaid position. I'm volunteering to do it, but it's fun.
Yeah. Don, will you record your sessions on teaching the young girls how to stretch? I just I want to see you in a downward dog, Don.
I'm not doing that West Coast yoga hippie crap.
Yoga hippie crap, I love it.
It's basically just team stretching where you it's all resistance training where you're pushing down and pushing back, and you release it and you push it back down, and it helps with flexibility. So
yeah, well,
it's all good.
Hey, all in good fun, Don. But it's remarkable, that it finally took you to bring kind of I guess legitimacy to stretching in the girls predominantly women's dominated sports, cheerleading. But yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting, and I wanted to see whether you had went through with it. So thank you, Don, and we look forward to having you as many times as we can, because I know you have scoreboard duties and all kinds of duties there. So we look forward to having you back as much as we can.
Yeah, definitely.
Bill, your final thoughts for the evening and social media.
Yeah. So I guess one very quick one slight, still fairly quick. So on this day in 1984, Carl Lewis duplicated what one of his sort of track and field heroes, Jesse Owens, did by winning the fourth of that golden 4 gold medals by being the anchor leg on a 4x100 relay team that won the gold at a 37.83 time in the 4x1. But also on this day, in 1968, at the age of 62, Leroy Robert Satchel Paige got signed, right, by the Oakland A's. Now, Robert Finley, the owner of the A's, was a showman, I guess. Robert Finley was a guy that try things. At one point, he paid guys $500 bonuses to grow mustaches. Right? He would do. Look it up. I think it was a reaction against the Yankees because the Yankees had then, I think maybe still do have, maybe they relaxed it finally, but they used to have a no facial hair policy for a very long time.
I believe they still do.
I believe they maybe still do. And so I think it was sort of his reversal of that, right? And so it was both, sort of a publicity ploy, but also it was a very decent thing to do. Satch was a few days short of it wasn't the A's. It was the Braves.
Indian or the Braves?
It was the Braves. Take it back. It was the Braves. He had, I think he might have, yeah. So he might have actually pitched for the Athletics back when they were in Kansas City. But he gets signed. So what happened was he was a few days short of what it took to get a major league pension. He needed 158 days of major league service, and he was a few days short. And in an extremely decent, cool thing, they signed him and let him finish out the season. He never pitched for them, but later became a pitching coach. And I think was the first black pitching coach, come to think of it, in the majors. But Leroy Satchel Paige. I mean, Leroy Robert Satchel Paige. First of all, I only wish that podcast had been around when Satch was around. I've heard lots of interviews with him, and I've talked to the late great Theodore Roosevelt Double Duty Ratcliffe here in Chicago, who played with and against Satch at various points, and I've heard wonderful stories. And he was such a great storyteller and such an entertainer, and of course, frankly, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. And sadly, most Americans have no idea what kind of pitcher he was. I would urge you, and there's not that much film, but YouTube, thankfully, has found some. People have found some of it and posted on YouTube. I would urge you to watch him because it's sort of like the Globetrotters in that he was such a showman. You could see him like joking with people, whatever. But then you watch his control. And when he was young, he could really bring it. But even when he was old, he had such amazing control. Even as an old guy, I mean, old, like when he gets to the majors, he's pitching in his 40s and 50s. And he would sometimes have 4 scoreless innings of relief where guys who are in their primes are struggling because his control is so fine, so good. He's putting the ball exactly where he wants it. So I would urge anybody who has not familiarized himself with Leroy Robert Satchel Paige to check out his quips, right? His little witticisms. He wrote some books that I think are worth reading, including Don't Look Back because it might be catching up. He was just a great philosopher of life, and just talked about not eating too much fried food because it angries up the blood. I mean, he was just I'm telling you, Satch was a hoot, man. I would urge you, if you've not familiarized yourself with his everything, his words, his play, his love of life, I would urge you to do so because he's just a joy.
Mike, take us home, my man.
Yes, sir. And it's very nice to do this with all 3 of you gentlemen. So I appreciate it very much. I want to talk about purity and the sport of baseball, especially Little League baseball. It's one of my favorite moments of the year. I don't really watch much professional baseball unless it's the Giants. But when it becomes the Little League World Series, it's just great because it's just pure emotion. These kids out there, win, lose, whatever it is, they really feel the game, and it's what made the game so special. And one moment occurred yesterday where a pitcher just totally beamed a batter and just put him down, and the batter walked to first base, as you do when you're play baseball and you get hit by a pitch. And he looked over at the pitcher, and the pitcher was just downtrodden, head down, just like, what did I do? What did I do? I just hurt someone. And the batter that was hit went over to the pitcher and just gave him a big hug and said, you know what? I'm okay. You do what you do, and we'll get along, and everything is just fine. And walked over back to first base. And it's easily one of the greatest moments I've seen in all of sports. So I just wanted to touch on that. And again, thank you, gentlemen, very much for having me on.
Hey, and as usual, guys, always good to see you. Don't forget to sign up for the Fantasy Football League. Mike is already signed. Bill,
Sure.
Did you email it, or how'd you send it?
I sent it to you by email, and I
Yeah, I'll
think
check
I
this.
also sent you. I think I also sent you an invite directly from the team page.
Oh.
We'll be having a live draft the 28th, I believe. I said it was
Okay.
the last Thursday in the month.
Yep.
So look forward to that. And shout out to Demetrius. Hope everything works out well. And also look forward to having Chris back. So have a great night, guys. Appreciate your time. See you next week.
See you in a
Thank you.
week.
Have a good night.
You have a good night, sir. So yeah, I'll check my emails then.
All right. Yeah. It might be from ESPN.